Bosses are an integral part of the Binding of Isaac. You're gonna have to fight one every single floor, and with 103 different ones of them, learning what all of them do can be pretty intimidating. This will be your definitive boss guide for the Binding of Isaac. I promise you, after watching this, you're not gonna need another one. I'm gonna explain every single move a boss can use against you, every attack it has, every pattern it has, and how you dodge it. Obviously, this knowledge I'm sharing with you today does not make up for cold hard practice. A lot of these enemies are based on pattern recognition, knowing what they're gonna do. If you know ahead of time what a boss is gonna do, it's gonna make it a lot easier for you to dodge it. That being said, this boss guide should make bosses a lot easier for you. And before watching the video, feel free to leave a comment. Let me know which boss gives you the most trouble personally. Enjoy. We're starting off with Monstro. Monstro has 3 moves you can use against you. The first one is just a short hop in your direction, which you can just easily sidestep to avoid getting hit. The second one is a disorganized burst of tears that he coughs up. For this one, I could recommend staying as far away from him as possible. The tears come in a fairly narrow pattern, so if you can just try to avoid that main cone of tears, it should be pretty easy to avoid any stragglers that might come at you. For Monstro's last move, he briefly jumps off screen and lands exactly where you were standing as he was jumping. On landing, he shoots a bunch of short-range, slow tears in all directions, so once again, if you keep your distance, it should be really easy to dodge all of them. Most of them won't even reach you, and those that travel farther should be slow enough for you to easily react to it. Monstro comes in 2 flavors of champion. The gray one is 15% larger and has 25% more HP for a total of 312.5 base. Regular Monstro having 250 base. I forgot to include that information at the start of the segment. Further bosses will have the HP at the start of each of their segments. Grey Monstro only has the hop attack and is much more likely to use the volley of tears, and he will never jump off screen. Red Monstro behaves exactly like regular Monstro, except it's 2 of them with 20% less size and 55% less HP for 112.5 per Monstro. For this phase, I would just recommend focus firing one of them and getting it out as soon as possible. Gemini is yet another very simple boss. You have these 2 dudes for a total health of 280, 140 apiece. The big guy is just gonna chase you, and while the small guy is still attached to him, he's gonna fire the occasional tear at you. Really, all you want to do in this phase is just run in circles. That should auto-dodge the tears that fly at you and keep you safe from Gemini. If you want to be super safe, you can wait until he stops to catch his breath to deal some damage to him. Once the big guy is dead, the small guy is just going to chase you around the room, so once again, keep running in circles and he should really never reach you. Just be aware that your tears are going to apply knockback to him and they might shove him into the center of the room, but as long as you keep a close eye on him, that really shouldn't be a problem to dodge him. Green Gemini is really no different from regular Gemini. They already start separated, but other than that, their behavior is exactly the same. Little guy is a bit more free to move around, but it's rarely going to make a difference if you do the running in circles strat. One thing worth noting about this champion variant though is that if you manage to kill the big guy last, then he will be guaranteed to drop you at least half a red heart, oftentimes a full red heart, and he's even able to drop you a soul heart, black heart, or any other variation. Blue Gemini's only difference is that the little guy is going to shoot homing shots at you. Unfortunately, that isn't shown when you manually spawn that in because the small guy isn't going to be a champion. However, if you manage to kill the big guy last in this phase, he's going to drop you a guaranteed soul heart. Steven is really just another Gemini clone, that's why he goes into this chapter. Much like Gemini, he's gonna chase after you, periodically speeding up and then stopping to catch his breath. The only difference here is that once Big Steven reaches 50% HP, then they're both going to separate from each other and the little guy is going to start chasing you, much like Gemini. When killing either of these, they both release the burst of tears. Big Steven is going to fire 2 sets of tears in all cardinal and ordinal directions, and Little Steven is going to fire 1 set of small tears in all cardinal and ordinal directions. That last bullet attack in particular is definitely something that's a bit about feel. You need to develop a feel for how long it's still going to take for either of them to blow up. What I recommend is keeping your distance from them when you know they're getting close to death. The farther you're away from them when they blow up, the easier it's going to be to dodge their attacks. Dingle can be pretty tricky for a basement boss. His base HP is 300. He generally stands still for a little bit and then performs one of 3 attacks. Number 1, he can dash at you 3 times in succession. which you can easily sidestep by just keeping your distance. Sometimes, note, when he does his first dash, he leaves behind a trail of poop, which can actually influence his trajectory and end up getting you hit because it'll be kind of unpredictable. The second one has him fire 3 projectiles at you, which you can also dodge easily if you just keep your distance because the spread is really huge on those. And for his third one, Dingle whistles and then fires 3 projectiles at you like the last attack, and also summons 2 little dips. Now Dingle, I think, is a boss that can give newer players some trouble, but his moves are actually very telegraphed. He has a distinct tell before all 3 moves. Before using his dash attack, Dingle inhales, closes his eyes, puffs up his cheeks, and then dashes at you. For the projectile attack, he kind of squeezes himself together with the teeth still out and the eyes open before firing the 3 bullets at you. And for the dip summoning attack, Dingle does his signature whistle right beforehand. Red Dingle has 2 main differences compared to regular Dingle. First of all, he charges 4 times, but also much slower than Brown Dingle. And on his whistle attack, he will summon a red poop instead of 2 dips that will hurt you if you touch it. You can destroy the red poop, but it's going to regrow. Red Dingle also does have access to the triple bullet attack, but it's no different than Brown Dingle's. Black Dingle will summon spiders instead of dips on his whistle attack. He's also going to fire 8 bullets in all cardinal and ordinal directions instead of 3 directly at you. He also only dashes once, but his dash is much faster than that of regular Dingle. Gurglings come in pairs and only have 1 attack. If you get into their line of sight in any of the cardinal directions, they're going to start charging at you until they hit a wall, but their charges can also be stopped, as you saw there, by attack flies. If they run into an attack fly, that's also going to stop their charge. That's all you got to know about them. When you get into their line of sight, just sidestep them and you should be good. Yellow Gurglings come in sets of 3. I spawned 5 here on accident. Don't ask me why. I'm a silly man. Either way, they're only going to charge at you. That's all they do. They don't leave creep on the ground. They don't summon flies. All they do is charge at you at a higher speed than regular Gurglings. You can stop their charge by having them charge into one another, but that's actually kind of difficult. Just keep sidestepping them, bait them, and shoot at them, and you should be good. Black Gurglings once again spawn as a pair. All they do is drop troll bombs periodically when they charge at you. No flies, no creep, just troll bombs. Stay far away from them, then you're not going to be in any danger of getting hit by the troll bombs. Note that they take reduced damage from their old troll bombs. They only take 5 points as opposed to 100, so that's not going to work, baiting them into blowing themselves up. The best time to hit them is either right after they charge or by angling your tear shots. Larry Jr. is a multi-segmented boss that really does nothing other than move around in the room. Every segment has a base HP of 22. The wiki article on this boss actually says that he changes directions only when he collides with walls, but I think it's pretty evident from this footage that that's not true. Either way, keep your distance and you should be fine with this guy. As of Repentance, Larry Jr. also has a chance to be replaced by a grub. These guys are pretty similar to Larry as they move around the room randomly as well, but if you get into their line of sight, they're going to charge at you, and upon death, they're going to release a bunch of little guys that you also have to destroy. Green Larry, like regular Larry, is going to move around randomly, occasionally stopping short and firing a tear in the direction he's facing. For this guy, keep your distance and also stay out of his line of sight, and you should be completely fine. Blue Larry is 15% larger than regular Larry and comes with 45% more HP. That being said, the health is actually shared between the segments, meaning if you hit one segment of a Larry, all the other segments are also going to take damage. Blue Larry will also drop you a blue heart upon defeat. For all Larrys, the general strategy is just to keep your distance, as you won't be caught off guard as easily by the random turns. Other than that, you can really only react to what he does. Unlike most bosses, the winning strategy against Larry is pretty reactive as opposed to being proactive like the other ones, so really just keep your distance, carefully assess what he does, and react accordingly to get out of the way. This is not a particularly difficult boss, but he can catch you on the wrong foot due to his randomness. The Duke of Flies probably takes the number 2 spot amongst the easiest bosses in the game. All he does is diagonally float around the room and summon flies. He does actually have 3 different quote-unquote attacks, the first of which he spawns 3 attack flies that orbit around him. The second one spawns a larger attack fly that immediately goes for Isaac. And then he also does this thing where he puffs himself up and sends all orbiting flies after you. He can only use that attack if he has 5 to 6 orbiting flies though. The Duke of Flies also has a spawn limit where he's going to stop spawning more flies. According to the wiki, that line is 12, but there's clearly 9 flies on the screen here and he stopped summoning. I don't know what the true number is. I don't know if maybe the bigger flies count for different amounts than the small flies, but the point is he's going to stop spawning at some point in order to prevent weaker builds from getting overwhelmed. That being said, it should really never come to the point where there's 9 flies on the screen at the same time, because with the Duke of Flies, you really always want to focus fire his little flies. With a usual starting build, every character should be able to two-shot the flies off of spawn, unless you start Eden with a very weak starting build. So just focus fire those flies, attack Duke of Flies while there are none on screen, and really this boss is not going to pose any threat. He moves so slowly, he should never really hit you. It's going to be really easy to keep your distance, so focus those flies and you'll be fine. Also, one more quick note. For some reason, the flies spawned by Duke of Flies die on impact with Isaac, so no fly is ever going to deal more than half a heart of damage to you. Also, if there's a bulk of flies coming at you, an easy way to get rid of them is to just charge headfirst into him, take a half heart of damage, and take all of them out by touching them. Upon death, the Duke spawns 6 random attack flies, which for some reason don't die upon touching Isaac. Those are exempt from that rule, so just make sure to not be too close to him as you kill him and clean those up after they spawn. Green Duke spawns motors instead of large attack flies, which is the double flies that you have to separate first. Also, upon releasing all flies towards you, he's going to fire 8 tiers in all cardinal and ordinal directions, so even more important to keep your distance with that guy. Also, unlike regular Duke, this guy can send his flies after you at any point in time. Orange Duke is 15% larger with 25% more HP, and instead of the large attack flies, he spawns suckers and sends them after you, which shoot tiers in all cardinal directions upon death. Other than that, he's the same as regular Duke, just be careful when you kill those suckers and you should be fine. The Widow has 3 different moves she can use against you. First off, she can poop out a spider sack and a puddle of creep, which can also spawn more spiders. She can also hop at you, which you can easily run under, and she can stop short and spit out spiders one at a time, which will crawl around the room and aim in on you if they get close to you. Also note that the Widow's white creep does not actually damage Isaac, just slows you down. As for fighting this boss, your 2 general options are either to stay really close or really far. If you stay close, you can run under her as she hops at you. If you stay really far, you're just going to be out of range. Either way, you should not have any big troubles with this boss as long as you run under her or sidestep her jumps and focus the mobs first. Black Widow replaces 2 of Widow's original moves. Instead of summoning spiders, she shoots 6 tiers in a hexagon pattern. To avoid those shots, you just don't want to stand into those directions, or, you know, like me, just stand in that direction but have the tier barely not reach you. Like regular Widow, Black Widow also performs hops towards you, which you can dodge in the same way as regular Widow. And lastly, instead of spider spawners and white creep, she spawns black creep, which is functionally the same as white creep, and she spawns big spiders instead of little ones. Pink Widow is 25% smaller and has 10% less HP than regular Widow. Like regular Widow, she's gonna hop at you. Instead of little spiders, she spawns attack flies, and instead of sacks, she spawns boils alongside with white creep. She also moves overall much quicker than regular Widow, but that doesn't really change general strategy of focusing down her ads and then trying to hit her in between the attacks. One more thing worth mentioning is that every iteration of Widow can crush her own ads if you can get her to jump on top of them. So this is definitely something you want to try and take advantage of if you can do so. The Blighted Ovum is the undead version of Gemini. They're immediately separated. If you get to the left or the right of the small guy, he's going to fire a brimstone in a horizontal direction. Note that the small guy is also completely invulnerable and dies as soon as the big guy is defeated. Meanwhile, the big twin is going to chase after you and leave a puddle of red creep behind wherever he walks, periodically speeding up and then slowing down again. Really, all you need to do against these guys is run in a big wide circle around the room so the creep despawns before you get back to the spots you were in, as doing so will also automatically dodge you any brimstone lasers. The Haunt is a two-faced boss. He starts off with 3 little ghosts circling around him, which he will send after you. Firstly, 1 of them, then 2. The little ghosts have a really awkward movement pattern where they slowly flow towards you, but at the same time mimic your input slightly, so it can be kind of awkward to navigate them. You just want to try and pull them together and take them out as fast as you can. After his entourage has been defeated, the Haunt becomes vulnerable. He's going to quickly float towards the top of the room. You want to make sure not to stay above him as he does that. Once he's at the top of the room, he has 2 moves. While he floats from left to right, he will either randomly fire out 5 bullets towards you, or he's going to do a quick inhale before firing a brimstone while staying in motion. While it seems tempting to dodge all of this by staying to the sides of him, you can't actually do that because he will perform a charge attack at you. Generally, the best strategy for this guy is to stay diagonally from him. If you have the ability to shoot diagonally, that's going to turn him into easy mode. However, he does have some cooldown between each of these attacks, so after he's attacked you, you are free to fire at him for a short period of time before going into hiding again. Black Haunt will start the fight only with 2 little haunts, which he will send at you simultaneously. After that, he snaps to the top of the stage again. He has the same tier shooting attack as regular Haunt, and the brimstone is replaced replaced by him spawning between 1 and 2 spiders. Pink Haunt starts the fight with 1 little haunt and also has only half the HP of the other 2 variations. His Brimstone attack now fires 2 diagonal lasers that bounce off of the wall once, and his Bloodshot attack now fires 8 tiers towards Isaac. This version of Haunt looks particularly intimidating to new players until you realize there's actually a safe spot in about the bottom third of the room. If you just manage to stay underneath the Haunt in that area, then it's going to be pretty much impossible for him to hit you. Pin probably takes the #1 spot in the game for easiest boss, which is really funny because he has a fairly complex moveset that I did not know about before researching for this video. On the surface, Pin only does 2 things. A, he sticks his head out and he fires a red exploding tear at you. And B, he jumps out of the ground towards Isaac and then burrows back on the ground. What I didn't know is that Pin actually has 3 different types of jump attacks. He can perform either a short hop where he doesn't fire any tears at all. He can do a mid-length hop where he will fire 4 tears diagonally just after fully leaving the ground. And he can do a long jump where he will fire 4 tears diagonally just after leaving and just after resubmerging. Overall, this guy really shouldn't give you any trouble though. What I like to do for dodging is just run around in circles. Like every time he jumps out of the ground, you run to the next quarter of the room and you should be absolutely fine. This guy shoots very slow tears. He always jumps right at you so you can easily sidestep him. And he's really just a piece of cake. Gray Pin is 15% larger with 25% more max HP. When he jumps at you, he's going to fire 6 tears at you as opposed to 4. He doesn't do that here because apparently when you spawn him in via console, he doesn't fully turn into Gray Pin. And when he sticks his head out of the ground, instead of an Ipecac shot, he will fire 6 spiraling tears, which move really slowly and should be very easy to dodge for you as well. Overall, not much of a step up from regular Pin. You shouldn't have much trouble with this guy. Famine is the last basement boss and has 2 phases. If you're not to his left or right, he's gonna summon Pooters for a total of 2 that can be on screen at max. Once there's 2 on screen, he's gonna try and get to the left or right of you to perform a second attack, which is a charge across the screen, where he's going to re-enter from the other side of the screen. If he charges into any of his Pooters during his attack, he will destroy them. When he drops to about 25% of his max HP, Famine will go into phase 2, where he's just a floating head that floats towards you and will occasionally shoot 3 tears at you. The best way I found to deal with Famine is to bait him into doing his charge over and over again. Sometimes he will summon a Pooter, but in general, this is a great way to keep the Pooter population low, and in general, it's going to be easier for you to fight Famine than to fight Famine and a bunch of Pooters. For phase 2, Famine does have a cooldown between moves, so just keep your distance when he fires at you. It should be really easy because there's a wide spread on the triple shot, and then go in for some damage and step away again to dodge the attacks. Blue Famine has the same charge attack as regular Famine, except he can use it even if you're not in his line of sight. Instead of summoning Pooters, he will shoot 6 tears in a star pattern, which you can also easily avoid by keeping your distance. In phase 2, like regular Famine, he will slowly float towards you, but instead of a triple shot, he will fire a burst of tears at you similarly to Monstro. Blue Famine will always drop you Soul Heart on defeat. Fistula is our first caves boss. He just moves around the room very slowly, bouncing off of walls, and that's pretty much all he does in the early stages. He does a full Heart of Contact damage in this form. When his HP drops to 0, he splits into 4 smaller Fistulas that move significantly faster and can also bounce off of each other. All of those medium-sized Fistulas then split into 2 smaller Fistulas, which move even faster. The small Fistulas will then leave behind a charger with 15 HP for you to defeat. There's really not a whole lot to say in terms of strategy for this guy. The only thing you want to pay attention to is to not split him up all at once. If you do that, you're pretty quickly going to be in a pretty rough shape. You really just want to go for the weakest one after another and try to take those out. Be careful when you destroy the smallest pieces though, because those chargers will immediately aggro on you if you're in their line of sight. So try to avoid that. Also worth noting that the smallest pieces will not spawn chargers if you destroy them over a pit or another kind of obstacle, so definitely take advantage of that if you get the chance. Gray Fistula is 15% larger than regular Fistula with 25% more HP. Other than that, it's very similar. He moves much slower than regular Fistula. On the first split, he spawns 3 medium-sized Fistulas, which then spawn 2 small Fistulas upon defeat. The small Fistulas will spawn you Boomflies instead of chargers, so just make sure to keep your distance to not get caught in the explosion and you'll be fine. Chub randomly moves around the room into one of the cardinal directions and can perform one of 2 moves. One, she can spawn chargers randomly 1 or 2 at a time for a maximum of 5 on the field at all. After the limit of 5 is hit, chargers need to be destroyed before she summons new ones. And B, she charges at Isaac if he ever lines up in any of the cardinal directions with her. Please note that Chub does in fact dislike smoke, as the rules card has been telling us for 10 years. So if Chub ever lines up with you and charges at you, you do have the ability to place a bomb in her way, she's going to eat the bomb, pause for a second before taking massive amounts of damage. Bombs are a great way in general to take care of Chubb, especially if you have a weaker build. It's a great way to keep her in check. In general, I would recommend staying in the cardinal directions from Chubb to force her to charge at you as often as possible. This will prevent her from spawning any pesky chargers. Those are really the main threat, because if she starts flooding the room with those, on a mediocre build in particular, it can be really easy to get overwhelmed. So make sure to keep her charging. If you have excess bombs, make sure to use them. And also please note that Chubb does do a full heart of contact damage. Blue Chubb is really just a chunkier version of regular Chubb. She's 15% larger and 15% slower than normal, but has 25% more HP. Instead of chargers, she's going to spawn boils. These are different color than the regular red boils, but they behave just as regular boils do, as you can see. Other than that, it's just plain old Chubb, so all the tips from regular Chubb apply. Just try to keep the spawns in check and you're going to be fine. Try to keep her charging as often as possible, although sometimes she will be a bit uncooperative in that regard. But overall, not very different from OG Chubb. Red Chubb, or Orange Chubb as she's labeled in the code, is a speed demon. She's 15% smaller and faster than regular Chubb with 15% less health. She spawns speedies instead of chargers, but the main threat from this Chubb comes from her ridiculous speed. This Chubb in particular, I think, is a really big deal, not necessarily in boss fights where she's alone, but in the later game, and especially in Greed mode. You're gonna have many rooms where you fight double Chubbs, and if you're on a mediocre build, that can be a really, really big problem. Other than that, all the regular tips apply. Try to keep the mobs in check, and absolutely use your bombs against this version of Chubb. Due to her lower health, they do a bigger chunk of her max HP, and this Chubb can really easily hit you due to her higher speed. Chad is really just another champion variation of Chubb, so I'm gonna list him in this category. Chad moves exactly like Chubb does. Instead of other enemies, Chad spawns suckers, which burst into 4 tiers in all cardinal directions upon hits. You can feed him with bombs just like regular Chubb. Only difference here that's really worth mentioning is the fact that Chad, the more damage you do to him, will continually shrink in size over the course of the fight and get faster. So that's something to look out for. Definitely makes sense to use your bombs towards the end of the fight if you have them, as he speeds up to similar speed levels as Orange Chubb. But other than that, same old fight as Chubb. Gertie is a tank, plain and simple. She's got really high base HP. She's stationary at the top of the room, at least if you naturally go into a boss room. If you spawn her in, she actually sits in the middle of the room, so apologies for that. Every 3 to 4 seconds, she does one of 4 things. 1, she ducks into her own body before coming out and shooting 5 projectiles at Isaac. These will always be aimed at Isaac, either to the left, right, or bottom, depending on where you stand. She does not perform this attack if you're above her, but due to her proximity to the top wall and also the fact that she spawns enemies there sometimes, I wouldn't advise standing there. 2, she can spawn a pooter near herself. 3, she can spawn 2 attack flies behind her, hence why you shouldn't be standing behind her. And 3, she summons 2 boils in front of her. That's really all she does. Much like Chubb, just try to keep the spawns in check and you're going to be fine against this enemy. Note that her attacks are spaced pretty consistently between one another, so it should be fairly easy to predict when her projectiles come. The way I like to approach this boss is just that I try to switch sides every time I know an attack is coming, so this way you should easily be dodging the 5-shot, and just try to make sure to get as many hits in as possible during her downtime. Green Gertie is really just a footnote because all she does is summon enemies. She doesn't have the projectile attack. She is 11% larger than a regular Gertie, but she does not have more HP. Really nothing noteworthy about this boss, pretty much just Gertie with 1 less attack. Mega Fatty is finally a boss again with a more diverse moveset. Mega Fatty can do a bunch of things. He can do a long leap where he stays off screen for a while and then lands right where Isaac was standing at the time of the leap, leaving a puddle of red damaging creep on the ground. He can do a short hop where he slides briefly towards Isaac and then instantly lands again where Isaac was standing at the time of the leap, also leaving red creep where he lands. He can do a long inhaling attack where he sucks Isaac in. After the inhale, he vomits upwards and has a bunch of projectiles following Isaac around from the ceiling. And lastly, he can do a fart attack where he either summons between 1 and 3 dips or fires a cluster of tears at you, similar to Monstro's spray attack. The name of the game for Mega Fatty is definitely just stay in motion. The most threatening move he has is definitely the short hop, and in order to avoid that, you do need to be proactive and be moving. Same goes for the tear spray. This one's not really threatening at all, especially because you can usually really clearly see the shadows. but just stay moving and none of his attacks should really ever hit you. As always, prioritize crowd controlling the ads, even though he doesn't really summon too many, and you're gonna be fine. Brown Mega Fatty has 15% more HP than regular Fatty. When he does his long range jump off of the screen, upon landing he sends out a wave of 4 rocks in all cardinal directions, which also switch directions erratically. I like to refer to them as RNG rocks because sometimes they are truly unpredictable, but if you stay close to walls, there's always a chance that the rocks will just run into a wall and disappear. Mega Fatty is hilarious for reasons I'm about to explain. First off, he's 33% smaller than regular Fatty and has 10% less HP. Upon landing from his big jump attack, he shoots out 6 bullets rather than leaving a puddle of red creep. And on his fart move, instead of summoning dibs, he summons a singular red poop that deals contact damage to you if you touch it. But the truly funny part about this guy, and you might have already seen it, after his inhale, when he does the vomit attack, it's replaced by 4 streams of projectiles, similar to something that Mom's Heart does, which we're going to cover later. But as you've already seen, they have so much tier height that it's almost impossible to get hit by these attacks. I tried to get a clip of actually getting hit by it, but I couldn't do it. So if you just stay in place and close to Fatty, you're never going to get hit by this move. Mega Maw is yet another boss with 5 different moves. He can do his organized burst of tears similarly to Monstro, which you can sidestep just as easily. He can spit out a hopper directly underneath himself, which behaves like a regular hopper and which I recommend you immediately take out. He can fire out 2 rings of 5 flames each, which rotate in opposite directions. And lastly, he can shoot out 9 fires in a circular pattern, which will either rotate clockwise or counterclockwise, or just run out straight. For every single one of the fire attacks, I recommend standing in either the bottom left or the bottom right corner. Give those fires time to spread out as far as possible. The more they space out, the easier they're going to be to dodge. So if you want to try and be absolutely safe, just hide in the corners until he doesn't attack. There's downtime between each of one, and then use that downtime to attack him. Black Maw is probably one of the strongest contenders for biggest downgrade a boss has received upon becoming a champion. All he does is do the Monstro shots, which once again are even easier to sidestep than actual Monstros. And then instead of the flame attacks, he's going to be spitting between 1 and 2 spiders. Note that these always going to be landing on top of you. He's always going to be spitting those spiders at you. Very easy to sidestep once again, but similar to Mega Fatty, what you want to do against this guy is just stay in motion and none of the spiders should ever hit you. So remember how I said Black Maw was a huge downgrade? Well, here's Red Maw. And Red Maw is probably the first boss in this guide that I could see people specifically coming to this video for to find assistance. So I'm gonna give you an exact breakdown of what to do against this guy, and we'll look at all of his patterns and slow down. Red Maw has 4 different bloodshot patterns. The first one is a ring of 9 bloodshots that spiral outward. Similarly to the fire attacks from regular Maw, I recommend running to the outside of the room to get as much space between these projectiles as possible. But since the pattern and rotation of the bloodshots is random, you always have to keep a close eye on them as they come towards you. He can shoot 4 lines of 7 waving bloodshots that come at Isaac. This is probably his most threatening move, and once again, the corner is your best friend. Your goal is to evaluate how the shots are going to move and carefully sneak in between the spaces between the shots. He can fire 10 lines of bloodshots in all directions, which you can also dodge by getting as far away from him as possible. Don't do what I did here. You can clearly see here that if you keep your distance, there's plenty of space between those shots. This is probably his least threatening one, but that's not really saying a lot for this boss. Now, you might have heard me say a lot during this section that you need to watch his shots closely, and you might find that a bit unhelpful, but I think it's important to understand why that is such a big deal. Red Maw is one of, in my opinion, only 2 bosses where dodging him is a lot more reactive than proactive compared to other bosses, right? There's a lot of randomness to his patterns. He fires really rapidly, and if you go in to get hits in on him, he's probably gonna hit you. If you get close to him, the short distance between you and him is almost gonna make it impossible to dodge his attacks. And because there's almost no downtime between his moves, that also makes it impossible to look for any spots to get in some free damage. Really, the 2 best pieces of advice I can give you against this guy is to spawn him in with a console and try to practice dodging his patterns for a while. My second best piece of advice against this guy, if you're on a mediocre run and you're about to face a caves boss, pray to RNGesus it's not going to be Red Maw. Greedier Jr. can do 3 things. She can summon a Pooter, which I once again recommend taking out as fast as possible to avoid overcrowding. She can do a short hop in the air where she shoots 8 tiers in all cardinal and ordinal directions. And she can do a dash attack where she charges directly at Isaac and then keeps bouncing off the walls until she runs out of momentum. Note that she is actually a 2-phase boss. In the first phase, she can use all 3 of these attacks, while in the second phase, which starts under 50% HP, HP, she only uses the charge attack continuously. The blue champion version of Greedier Jr. comes as a pair of two. They have 45% less HP than regular Greedier and are 42% smaller. They only use the dash attack and nothing else, and they will always drop a soul heart upon defeat. Yellow Greedier is 15% larger than regular with 25% more HP. She spawns super pooders instead of regular pooders, which shoot 2 tiers each in a kind of a V shape. And she does the dash attack. She does not shoot any tiers herself in any capacity like regular Greedier does with the short hop attack. And also this one is a two-phase boss as well, so once she drops below 50% HP, she will also only use her dash attack until defeated. One more thing worth mentioning is that both regular and yellow Greedier are able to destroy their own summons with dash attacks, so if you can make her dash into them, this is definitely something you want to take advantage of. Peep is the more mellow little brother of his infamous undead version, which we're going to be talking about later, but Peep can also do a bunch of really threatening things. Peep can create puddles of yellow damaging creep around him to limit Isaac's movement. He can jump into the air and travel a short distance towards Isaac before landing on the floor again and sending out a ring of 12 yellow projectiles. For this move, you really just want to evaluate where he goes, which is indicated by his shadow on the ground, and then move as far away as possible from his landing spot to increase the spread on the tiers, and they should be no problem to dodge. And lastly, Peep can do a short hop before releasing 8 tiers in all cardinal and ordinal directions. After Peep loses a third of his max HP, his first eyeball is going to start to pop out and float diagonally across the room, bouncing off of walls. The eyeball will block any tiers that it comes in contact with, unless you have piercing shots, and it is immune to damage, so it's just going to float around the room until Peep is defeated, making it even harder for Isaac to freely move around the room. After Peep loses the second third, so 2/3 in total of his max HP, the second eyeball is also going to float around and create more obstacles around the room. Both eyeballs are going to disappear as soon as Peep dies. Yellow Peep is 15% smaller, moves around a bit faster, and leaves a constant trail of yellow creep behind. This brings me back to the age-old strategy of running around in circles around the room. You really just want to make Peep move around in a circle around the room so you don't have to worry about getting damaged by that creep. Blue Peep starts the fight with both of his eyes already popped out. Other than that, it's just a plain old Peep fight. It's a bit more tricky because you have to dodge the eyeballs from the get-go, but other than that, it's really no different whatsoever from the third phase of the regular Peep fight. The Husk is the undead version of the Duke of Flies. Similarly to him, he moves around the room but is much faster and can also perform similar attacks. Either he spits out 2 attack flies that orbit around him like with the Duke of Flies, as well as a spider that will immediately chase Isaac. Once again, for these spiders and flies, there's a spawn limit of 8. Once there's 8 of them on the field, he will not summon any more of them. He can also fire a spray of projectiles similarly to Monstro, but with much fewer projectiles. He can also fire bloodshots in all 8 directions. With this attack, he also releases all his flies and makes them free to chase Isaac. However, unlike the Duke of Flies, he can perform that attack at any amount of flies orbiting around him. Upon death, he spawns 6 to 8 random flies, attack flies, and pooders. Black Husk is 15% larger with 56% more HP than regular Husk. Instead of spiders and flies, he will summon boom flies. Other than that, he has the exact same moveset as regular Husk. You can use the boom flies to damage him because he will take damage from the explosion as well. Upon death, Black Husk also spawns an additional 1 to 2 boom flies. Red Husk is 25% smaller and moves around a lot faster. Rather than spawning any enemies, all he does is use the Ring of Tears attack that also regular Husk has. He doesn't spawn any flies or anything like that. He doesn't shoot tears at you. Upon death, he does spawn a bunch of flies and a red boom fly, but other than that, it's just a very simple boss. The Hollow is the undead version of Larry Jr. Usually comes in pairs of 2, but up to 4 hollows can spawn in any given hollow fight. He just moves around the room diagonally, occasionally poops, and whenever he collides with a wall, he changes direction. He can also change direction if he collides with Isaac, which I didn't manage to replicate here. Like Larry Jr., there's a chance that a grub replaces a hollow, but honestly, there's not a whole lot to say about this boss. His movement is very predictable. Just stay out of his way and you're not gonna have any trouble with this one. Green Hollow moves the same way as regular Hollow. The only difference is that his bodies have a chance to spawn a charger upon death. And sometimes he does stop to fire 3 tiers at Isaac. The general strategy doesn't really change though, you just want to move out of this guy's way and he's never going to hit you. Black Hollow is probably the most threatening version of Hollow, even though that's not saying a lot. He's 15% larger with 25% more HP, moves around the room a tad bit slower, and when his segments die, they spawn a black boomfly, which oftentimes does lead to chain reactions that just immediately kill any Hollow if you kill one segment. Golden Hollow is the boss you wish you would find every run, moves exactly like regular Hollow, 15% larger, 25% more HP, and upon death, every one of his segments drops a coin. Also, can we talk about how this is the boss that Edmund decided to give 3 champion forms to? Like, what were you thinking? Why this guy? He could have 10 champion versions and he wouldn't be threatening. Carrion Queen is basically just another Chub clone. She moves around the room randomly in all the cardinal directions. If Isaac lines up with her in any of said directions, she does a charge attack like Chub. She can also eat bombs that you put in her path, which stun her for a brief period of time and also deal considerable damage to her. She also spawns red poops in the room periodically up to a maximum of 5. She will bounce off of those if she runs into them and also destroy them. When she falls below half health, she's going to enter phase 2. In phase 2, she's going to lose all of her attack patterns from the first phase, and she's just going to move around the room diagonally, similarly to the Hollow. She's going to bounce off of every single obstacle that she runs into, destroying red poops in the process, and she's just going to move around the room until she is killed. Pink Carrion Queen has 100% more HP than regular Carrion Queen and moves slightly faster. Instead of red poops, she spawns little hearts that have 28 HP, and upon defeat will deal 40 points of damage to her. If there's any boss to use your bombs on, it's probably this one. It's incredibly convenient to hit her compared with hitting her tail, and her high max HP makes her a prime candidate for bombs if you can use them. Unlike regular Carrion Queen, she does not have a second phase, so the fight is just all the same. Dark One has 4 different attack patterns, 2 of which are based off of Isaac's relative location to him. He can dim the room similarly to Curse of Darkness. He can do a charge attack where he charges towards Isaac twice, going off screen and reappearing on the other side of the screen. He can fire a ring of 12 tears in all directions. And lastly, if Isaac is directly below him, Dark One can do a brimstone attack. Honestly, you should never see this one, as you pretty much just want to make this boss charge towards you over and over again. As long as he's charging at you, he can't dim the room, he can't do the tear attack that can be difficult to dodge at close range. But if you keep him charge him, he's pretty non-threatening, and if there's any fires in the room, you can also veer him towards those, so he's going to hit those and take damage. Polycephalus will burrow underground at the start of the fight and slowly move towards Isaac, popping out every time he gets close enough to him. After he pops out, he can perform 1 of 4 attacks. He can pop out and spawn a round worm, which as always I recommend you take care of immediately. He can also shoot a cluster of tears at you similar to Monstro, but with a wider spread and longer drawn out. He can shoot 8 tears in all cardinal and ordinal directions. And lastly, he can fire a spread of 3 projectiles right at Isaac, where you have to try and wiggle in between the shots. Preferably better than I did here. The key to beating Polycephalus is to try and bait him into popping out in the center of the room so you can move far away from him, which gives you more wiggle room to dodge his tear attacks. Other than that, after every single move, he gives you a bit of a grace period to try and deal damage to him, which you can use to lower his HP until he finally reaches 0. Red Polycephalus is not much different from regular one. Instead of 3 different tear patterns, all he has is 1 tear pattern that fires 6 shots in 6 different directions. And instead of round worms, he summons parabites that will follow you around until killed. Like with regular Polycephalus, try and focus the little ads, get away from him as he pops out of the ground, and use the little openings he gives you to reduce his HP. Pink Polycephalus spawns as a group of 2 Polycephali. They have all the same behavior as regular Polycephalus, except they do not spawn round worms. They also have 50% apiece off of regular Polycephalus for the exact same total HP. Other than that, the same tips apply. Try to pull them together so they stay close together and pop up at around the same time. Move away to dodge their tear attacks, and then go in when you have the opening to deal damage to them. Wretched is the undead version of the Widow. Similarly to the Widow, she's going to jump at you, which you can either sidestep or walk underneath. She can leave a puddle of white creep and shoot 8 tears in all cardinal and ordinal directions at the same time. The white creep, like Widows, does not damage you, but only slows you down massively. She can also summon enemies, which is always either 2 spiders, 1 big spider, or a trite. Also, like regular Widow, if you make her jump on her own mobs, she will kill them. So if you get the opportunity to do that, definitely take advantage of this. Upon defeat, the Wretched spawns 3 small spiders. Like with every boss that summons mobs, for this one I also recommend you take care of the mobs first, as it makes your time with the boss much easier and it prevents you from getting cornered. Other than that, it's really just a plain old Widow fight, so all the tips from the Widow apply for this one as well. Pestilence is the second Horseman of the Apocalypse. Pestilence will float around the room and leave behind a trail of green damaging creep. He'll occasionally fire Ipecac tears at you, which also leave behind a puddle of green creep that damages you. He'll occasionally summon either 2 chargers or 2 spitters for a maximum of 4 mobs on the ground. Pestilence can also use his Ipecac shots to kill his own mobs, if you can manage to do that. Once Pestilence falls below 50% of his max HP, his head will explode, which lets you know you've arrived in phase 2. He can now summon 2 red attack flies instead of chargers and spiddies. He no longer moves around the room quickly and more like drifts around aimlessly, but if you get close to him, he will still be firing Ipecac shots at Isaac at a much faster rate than before. One more thing worth mentioning, all of Pestilence's attacks do a full heart of damage, meaning 1 heart of contact damage, 1 heart from the Ipecac shots. However, the mobs he summons, as well as the green damaging creep, only do half a heart, and since you tend to get hit by those more often than not, that means the full heart of damage applies rather rarely. Grey Pestilence shoots 6 shots in all directions instead of Ipecac shots. He leaves behind white slowing creep instead of green damaging creep, and instead of charges and spiddies, he summons Trites. In phase 2, Grey Pestilence keeps his white creep and his 6 projectile shots, and instead of red attack flies, he will spawn red attack spiders. Pestilence is a really straightforward boss in general. Keep your distance, take care of the mobs first, and try to sidestep his Ipecac shots and avoid the damaging creep, and you're gonna be fine. Monstro 2 is the undead version of Monstro. Naturally, he can do 2 long hops in succession, after the first of which he fires 8 tears in all directions, after the second of which he spawns 4 suckers. Note that these suckers can't be killed by all of Monstro's other attacks, the most notable one being the brimstone laser that he fires to the left or right if he detects Isaac standing to the left or right. The only other move Monstro has is a short hop towards Isaac, similar to regular Monstro. As for the strategy on this guy, I recommend trying to bait him into firing his brimstone as often as possible. As of Isaac Rebirth, he can't actually do that twice in a row, whereas in Flash Isaac, you could actually stunlock him into brimstoning over and over. But the brimstone attack is definitely the one that gives you the most room to apply damage to him. When he does the long hop, he'll aim for Isaac's position, so just move out of the way, get far enough away from him so you don't get hit by the cluster of tears. And if he does the short hop, just sidestep that. Not a very complicated boss. Red Monstro is 20% smaller. As of Repentance, has 10% less HP. Before that, he has the same HP as regular Monstro, and he moves around much faster. He does only spawn 2 suckers on his second jump, and is generally plain old Monstro, except for the fact that it's all much faster. Same tips apply as for regular Monstro. This one can be a bit tricky, especially in the later floors when maybe 2 of them spawn at the same time, but the same tips apply as for regular Monstro. Gish is basically just a reskinned Monstro. He can fire black Ipecac shots at you, which leaves slowing but non-damaging creep. Similarly to Monstro, he can do a 2-part long hop attack, which targets Isaac, the first of which leaves black creep on the floor, which stays until the very end of the fight, and the second hop spawns 2 little Gishes. And lastly, like Monstro, he can do a short hop towards Isaac's position. If Monstro doesn't give you any trouble at this stage, then Gish really shouldn't either. You can sidestep literally every single one of his attacks. They're all telegraphed, and you just have plenty of time to move out of the way. As always, focus the spawns first and you're gonna be fine. The Cage is a jerk and potentially the reason you came to this video. He has 4 different attacks. He leaps off screen, targets the area that Isaac stands in. Upon landing, he leaves gray damaging creep and fires 4 to 5 lines of rock waves, which I lovingly refer to as RNG rocks. He can shoot 6 streams of 3 to 7 projectiles in a spiral pattern. He can spawn a gray Vs, who then fires a gray brimstone laser. These guys are only cosmetically different from regular Vs. And he can do a rolling attack, where he starts out rolling towards Isaac and then bouncing off the walls for a few seconds, rolling through the room. The rolling attack will kill his own spawn, so make sure to take advantage of that. For the spiral attack, you want to stay as far away as possible. There's going to be holes in those spiral patterns that you can sneak through. For the jump attack, you want to stand close to the wall. Being close to the wall means that one of his rock formations is immediately going to slam into the wall, and 2 more that go, in this case, to the left and right, are very likely to hit a wall very quickly. You'll also want to stand diagonally from him, as these rocks like to move in the cardinal and ordinal directions, but reminder that I do call them RNG rocks for a reason, so no matter where you stand, there's always a chance they come straight for you. As for its ads, the same rules apply as with literally every other boss. You want to take them out as fast as possible. Once again, a reminder that you can use his rolling attack to try and take out the ads for you, but once again, you want to reduce the number of enemies that's on the screen, so go for them as fast as possible, and they shouldn't be hurting you too much. Pink Champion Cage is just 2 cages with 50% HP each. They do the same rolling attack, they summon adds, but they never perform the jump attack. This champion version can get particularly nasty if they both decide to start to do their rolling attack at the same time. It gets really messy, it's a really difficult boss. Try to keep an eye on both of them. The spawns shouldn't be much of a problem because he tends to run them over immediately, but the rolling attack is very dangerous. Green champion cage is mostly the same as regular cage. He does occasionally spawn a puddle of green damaging creep. He never spawns any Vs, but he does use the other 3 attacks that regular cage uses. The Gate is the undead version of Mega Maw, and like Mega Maw, he's stationary at the top center of the room. The Gate can summon leapers, which will always land at the bottom center of the room, instantly performing their attack, shooting 4 shots into all cardinal and ordinal directions. The Gate can summon a maximum of 4 leapers this way, and also note that if there's no leapers in the room, the Gate will be forced to use this attack. That's also why it's always the first move he's gonna use. When there's at least 2 leapers alive, the Gate can charge up and do a brimstone attack that curves through the room and homes in on every single leaper that's in the room. This brimstone laser will always finish its targeting at the bottom center of the room. The Gate can fire a ring of projectiles which expands outwards and then rotates either clockwise or counterclockwise. He can fire a ring of 11 projectiles that move straight away from him. And lastly, the Gate can fire 2 rings of 6 projectiles each, which rotate in opposite directions. Gate can be a tough one due to the constant stream of tears that come at you, both from the mobs and from the boss itself. The number 1 rule here is to never stand at the bottom center of the room, because that's where all the hoppers will land, that's where all the brimstones will end. You definitely do not want to go to the bottom of the stage right underneath him. The best place to stay for most of the fight is to the left or the right of the enemy, because you're decently far away, you get to react to all the tier attacks. You also want to avoid the hoppers, not just because they do contact damage to you, but also because the brimstone attack is going to go straight through you if you're near one. When you see there's a tier attack coming, you can move as far away as you can from him. The best places to be is the bottom left or the bottom right corner, because that is literally as far away as you can be from him. This gives you maximum time to try and sneak through some of the holes in his attacks, and this way you have the best chance of trying to avoid them. Red Gate is similarly devilish to Red Maw. Whoever designed these 2 guys really seemed to hate us. He doesn't spawn any enemies, but instead has a completely different new set of 5 attacks. He can fire 8 lines of bloodshots that move outwards in a zigzag pattern. He can fire 8 lines of bloodshots that spiral outwards. He can fire 7 lines of bloodshots, which kind of do a pulsating pattern, moving forward, then back again, then forward, then back again. And lastly, he can fire 5 lines of 2 to 3 very slow-moving homing tiers at you. Red Gate will always do a full heart of damage with all of its attacks, and as you might have seen from the footage already, the easiest place to stay in this room is definitely the bottom left or the bottom right of the room. Most of the time these spots are safe, but what's more important is they give you the most amount of time to try and react to these attacks. There's always a little bit of downtime between every single one of Gate's attacks, which you can use to get to his left and right to fire attacks at him. But to stay safe, every time he doesn't attack, you definitely want to move to bottom left or bottom right of the room, whichever makes you more comfortable. Black Champion Gate is honestly a much more tame version of regular Gate. Instead of leapers, he's going to spawn spiders. Unlike the leapers, these spiders are actually tossed directly at Isaac as opposed to the bottom center of the room. Other than that, he performs the exact same attacks as regular Gate, except for the brimstone, which this version of Gate will never use. Loki is finally one of the easier depths bosses again. He's gonna teleport randomly to a position rather away from Isaac, and he will then perform one of 3 attacks. He can summon boom flies on top of himself, which then will move diagonally through the room for a maximum of 4 boom flies at the same time. He can shoot 8 projectiles in all directions, and he can do a 3-part attack where he shoots 4 projectiles in the 4 cardinal directions, followed by 3 projectiles in the 4 diagonal directions, and then another 4 projectiles in the cardinal directions. Loki also has a unique interaction with the meat cleaver, where if you use it on him, he turns into Loki 2 or Loki, whichever you want to pronounce him, but that's a womb boss, and we will be covering that later. The adversary is the undead version of Dark One. He can dim the room to give a Curse of Darkness effect for a limited amount of time. He can jump off screen and after a few seconds lands in Isaac's position, after which he also creates a few rings of rocks around him. These should be easily dodgeable for you if you just keep moving while he's in midair. He can also create 3 little spider enemies, which he's going to toss into random directions in the room in front of him. And lastly, he fires a brimstone in one of the cardinal directions that will try and curve towards Isaac. Now, the wiki says that he only does this attack if he sees Isaac in one of his cardinal directions. And after some testing, I came to the conclusion that he is way more likely, as you can see here, to do it if you stand in these directions. However, as you can see from this clip, he clearly can also use this move if you're standing diagonally below him and you're not even in range of the laser. As for fighting this guy, you want to always stay close to him. And obviously I'm doing it here naturally because I'm having a knife. I gave myself the knife for these demonstration purposes, but basically, being at the other end of the room guarantees you're going to get hit by that brimstone laser if he ever uses it. This is also why one of my biggest gripes to this day remains the room in Dark Room where there's two adversaries in opposite corners, because it's pretty much impossible to stay close to both of them unless one of them jumps towards you. But yeah, all of his other attacks are very easy to dodge. Just stay close to him and the brimstone probably won't hit you as long as you keep moving. The bloat. You know, if I had to guess, the bloat is probably the #1 reason people are going to be looking for this video. If you came here specifically to search for tips about the bloat, you got to tell me in the comments now. You're contractually obligated. That's just how it is. I don't make the rules. The bloat is the undead version of Peep, and thus Peep's attacks here are dialed up to maximum. Unlike Peep, his two eyeballs are running around the arena from the get-go. They pop out at the start of the fight and they move diagonally, and you're going to have to constantly keep track of what they do. The bloat can also do a large jump where he travels a moderate amount into Isaac's directions, and upon landing he leaves a small puddle of red creep and also fires tears in 8 directions. You want to stand as far away as possible from him when he does that to get enough time to react to the tears and also not stand in the puddle of creep. Furthermore, he can do a small jump in the air and fire 8 tears in all cardinal and ordinal directions. Occasionally, he'll also create a large puddle of red damaging creep below him, which is just one more reason to stay far away from this guy. And finally, probably the move he's most infamous for, if you ever find yourself standing either below or to the left or right of Peep, he will instantly fire brimstones either to the left or right or below, depending on where you stand. This is probably the move that gets most inexperienced players the most, but funnily enough, it's also the move that you can easiest bait him into using. If done right, you can bait bloat into continuously doing these moves over and over again and effectively locking in place, making this fight much easier. Other than that, the only real tip for this guy is to stay far away to not get caught in the puddles or in the tears. This is certainly a boss that takes a lot of practice to get right, especially because there's always that constant threat and semi-randomness of the eyeballs floating around. But all in all, I think this is a boss that a lot of people fear a lot more than they need to. And if you fight this guy a few times, you should get him down pretty easily. Green bloat is effectively not much different from regular bloat. Instead of tears, he fires ipecac shots. After a short hop, he's going to fire 2 ipecac shots. After a long hop, he's going to fire 3 ipecac shots. He produces green creep instead of red, which is functionally no different from the red one. And when he does, he also produces 2 chargers, which usually get killed by the ipecac shots. Now, while that's not very different from regular bloat, it's still enough to make him an absolute terror, but it's just one of those bosses that you need to practice a lot. The Mask of Infamy is a 2-phase boss. In the first phase, the heart and the mask are going to move around independently from one another. If you get too close to the heart, it's going to fire 8 tears in all cardinal and ordinal directions. After the heart gets destroyed, the mask is going to move around a lot faster. There's going to be a crack in the back of the mask. And if you're running a tier build or anything that doesn't pierce, you'll have to hit the mask from behind. Note that if you ever get into the line of sight in the mask, which is going to be in all ordinal directions, he will be locked into charging in that directions for the most part. So what you can do is you can force him to run into one direction and then hit him from the side. There's actually part of the side of the Mask of Infamy that does have a hitbox, and while he can randomly change directions every time he gets hit by your tears, most of the time he won't, and if you don't hug him like I do here and stay decently far away, he's also not going to run you over as much. The black champion version of the Mask of Infamy fires 4 homing shots as opposed to 8 red non-homing shots. Other than that, it's basically the same old boss. The heart moves around, the mask is invulnerable, and the mask behaves literally the same way as it does in the non-champion version. Oh, the heart also has 25% more HP, whereas the mask remains unchanged. War is another one of the harbingers, and like the others, he also has 2 phases. While he's still on his horse, he can charge to the left or right respectively, and he's going to keep charging across the screen until he's crossed the entire screen 3 times. Note that this attack is a lot more likely to occur if you're standing directly to his left or his right. He can jump off screen and summon 5 troll bombs in random directions that you want to stay away from. He then re-enters the screen from the side that Isaac is furthest away from, so make sure to not stay in the center of the room to not make him unpredictable. And lastly, he can shoot 8 tears in all cardinal and ordinal directions, which hit here right before I knocked him into phase 2. And once again, you want to stay as far away as possible from him so you have more time to react. When War goes into second phase, he's going to start running after you, gradually building up speed up to the point where he finally outspeeds you. However, every time you strip about a third of his remaining HP off of him, he's going to fall down and stop for a second before getting back up and chasing after you again. Black Champion War has 25% more HP and is about 15% larger. When this guy does his charge attack, every time he crosses the screen, he's going to drop one troll bomb somewhere in his path. These aren't too difficult to avoid because you want to move out of his way anyway, but be wary of those anyway. He has the same 8 bullets tier attack, however when he jumps off screen, instead of 5 troll bombs, he's gonna summon 2 super troll bombs that chase you. When this guy starts phase 2, and also every time he trips, he's gonna fire 6 tiers in all directions, so make sure to keep your distance to be able to react to those. Furthermore, every version of War does a full heart of contact damage, so make sure not to touch this guy. Blastocist is our first wound boss. He does short hops towards Isaac. Then if Isaac is close to him, he can perform a short hop, which leads to a burst of tears being spread in all directions. And if Isaac is far away from him, he can also perform a long hop into Isaac's directions, and upon landing he fires 8 tears in all cardinal and ordinal directions. After depleting his first health bar, Blastocist is going to split into 2 medium-sized Blastocists. As long as you stay far away from them, they will just hop around aimlessly, but if you get close to him, they will aggro on Isaac and hop towards him, sometimes performing the short hop in place that also the first version of Blastocist does, except this time he's going to shoot 6 tears in random directions. After you deplete all the health from a medium-sized Blastocist, he will once again split into small-sized Blastocists. These will not chase after Isaac anymore and occasionally pause to shoot 4 tears in all cardinal directions, which should really not be much of a threat at this point. After you deplete the health of the small Blastocists, they will leave behind an embryo, which are just these little hoppers that jump around and do nothing and wait for you to take them out. As for the strategy fighting this guy, in phase 1 you just want to keep yourself moving. Try to stay as far away from him as possible. Don't get close to him like I do here. I just did this for demonstration purposes to show off his attack. If you stay in motion, he's pretty much never gonna hop on you, and if you stay far away from him, you're gonna have plenty of time to see all the tier attacks coming from him. And after he splits for the first time, he's not even gonna aggro on you anymore if you stay far away, and he becomes a piece of cake. One more notable piece of advice for Blastocist: the real danger from this boss comes from any boss fight where he's coupled with other bosses, be that a second Blastocist or like in the boss rush with another random boss. You always want to split this guy as fast as possible. If you don't split him up at the beginning of the fight in a multi-boss fight, he's just going to chase you the entire time and he's going to make your life hell. He can be legitimately threatening in multi-boss fights, especially since his large and medium forms do a full heart of contact damage, so make sure to split him as soon as possible if there's multiple other enemies present, and then you can just ignore the medium-sized Blastocists until you've taken care of all the other stuff in the room. Mama Gertie sits at the top of the room and occasionally does one of 4 different attacks. She can fire 5 spread projectiles at Isaac in any number of waves between 1 and 7. You should be able to dodge these no problem if you just keep moving to the left or right. You can also try and sneak between the holes of the shots, but at such short notice and with how fast they move, that could be difficult to execute. That long inhale can also be followed by a volley of orange tears, which mostly spread right in front of her mouth. It's important to sidestep that as well. And to complete the inhale attack trio, Mama Gertie can also launch a spread of disorganized bullets similar to a monstrous lung shot at Isaac. Mama Gertie's last move notably doesn't start with an inhale, but with her clutching her fists and turning them around to summon spikes from the ground. These spikes spawn in random locations, and yes, they can spawn below Isaac. However, they do have a small delay to when their hitbox starts and when they can damage Isaac, so if you keep moving, you should be able to react to these and not get hit by them. Lastly, Mama Gertie occasionally retreats upwards, which is then followed by 1 or 2 rounds of the spike attack, and when she comes back on screen, she immediately does the orange bullet attack. Mama Gertie will always come back down at the same spot that she left the screen of. Other than that, these attacks are no different from when she uses these moves on screen. Skolex might be the top contender for easiest boss in the game relative to how late he shows up. Like Pin, he consists of different segments. Unlike Pin, you can only hit the very tail end. He jumps at Isaac out of the ground and burrows back down the same way Pin does. Occasionally, he will stick his butt out of the ground and shoot 3 ipecac shots in the general direction of Isaac. And then other times he will stick his head out of the ground and shoot a spread of monstro-like tears towards Isaac that you can also easily sidestep. There's honestly not much to say about this guy. Stay away from him, you have a lot of time to react to his really easy to dodge attacks. Make sure to go in for some damage when he sticks his butt out of the ground. and when he jumps towards you, but especially when he sticks his butt out, he's very easy to hit. And frankly, at the point you make it to the womb, this boss really shouldn't be giving you any trouble whatsoever. And speaking of bosses that shouldn't give you any trouble whatsoever, here's Mr. Fred. Mr. Fred is completely stationary in the center of a 2x1 room, which I didn't have here for demonstration purposes, but I think this video footage will do. He can burrow underground and shoot 8 tiers in all the cardinal and ordinal directions. He can spawn a little Fred, which immediately burrows underground and does its usual. He can shoot 4 big bullets in all the cardinal directions, leaving behind a bunch of damaging creep that is actually really difficult to see at times in the womb floors. And not pictured in this video footage is the fact that Mr. Fred in his usual arena usually spawns with 4 chained homunculi, which he can manually unchain, and they will run towards you. Not a big deal. There's really not a whole lot to say about this guy. As always, you want to take out all the mobs first. Try to keep track on whether there's damaging creep on the floor, because like I said, it can be pretty easy to miss on the red womb floor. Other than that, this guy really shouldn't give you any trouble. Seriously, this dude could spawn on the basement, and he would probably be still one of the easiest bosses in the game. Fighting Loki is really no different from fighting 2 Lokis at once. They have a move where they shoot 4 tiers in all cardinal, followed by 4 tiers in all ordinal, and then once again 4 tiers in all cardinal directions. They can spawn a red boomfly, which the wiki actually says there's a limit of 1 boomfly alive at once, but as you can see, that's clearly not true. Although that might have to do with me summoning them in per console as opposed to actually encountering the boss. And lastly, they have a move where they shoot 8 bullets in all cardinal and ordinal directions at the same time. Like I said, this is really no different from fighting 2 Lokis at once. Make sure to kill the boomflies immediately to reduce enemy load, and other than that, keep your distance from them so you have plenty of time to react to their attacks. If you just make sure to stay at an angle that's not covered by cardinal and ordinal directions, you're going to be fine against these guys. Daddy Longlegs has 3 different attacks. He can spit out 2 to 3 spiders in random directions. He can lift up his head slightly to make it invulnerable and stomp in 4 random directions around the room. Also note that this attack was heavily changed in Repentance. First of all, one of the stomps will always target Isaac's current position, so make sure to watch out for that. Second of all, the attack is now telegraphed, showing a little shadow where Daddy is gonna stomp for a short period of time before Daddy stomps there. And yes, that means before Repentance, this attack is completely random, and it's not your fault if you get hit by it. For his last attack, Daddy goes completely off screen and stomps in Isaac's location 4 times. After those 4 stomps, he will always perform a big stomp with his head along the horizontal plane across the center of the room. He will always stomp the closest spot to Isaac in this area and fire 8 tiers in all directions as he does. As for fighting this guy, you always want to stay in motion, as one of his stomps is at least always going to target you, depending on which move he does. Keep a close eye on the shadows and dodge those if possible, and take care of the spawns as always. You can attack the legs as they stomp down, but as you see, they have massive amounts of defense. So while you can do a little bit of damage, it's more important to focus on dodging as Daddy is attacking. Triachnid is basically the same boss as Daddy Longlegs. The only difference is that for his stomp attacks, he leaves white creep on the floor. All his stomp attacks also only stomp 3 times as opposed to 4. You can easily remember this because Triachnid is hanging off of 3 legs off the ceiling as opposed to Daddy Longlegs' 4. Also, he's called Triachnid. Unlike Daddy, he's gonna spit a trite in Isaac's directions, which you once again want to kill as fast as possible. Other than that, this is pretty much the same fight as Daddy Longlegs. Teratoma is the posthumous version of Fistula and just about as threatening. He starts out as a giant ball that moves around very slowly. Once you deal enough damage to it, he splits into 3 slightly smaller balls that move around a bit faster. Each of those, after dealing enough damage, is going to split into 2 even smaller and faster balls, and once you destroy those, 2 spiders are going to come out of them, and you're going to be able to finish that boss fight. I'd really love to say more about this boss, but this one's really just about predicting where Teratoma is going to go. He always bounces off the wall at the same angle that he bounces into the wall. He's super easy to dodge, probably one of the easier womb bosses as well. The only thing I have to note is that if there's a room with a hole and you kill the last Teratoma piece over the hole, it's not going to spawn any spiders. Death is the last of the 4 Harbingers. In phase 1, he can summon 4 scythes along the room, which will stay there for 2 seconds and accelerate towards Isaac. Note that if you're close to any wall, he will not summon a scythe on that wall when he uses his move. He can use the hourglass to slow Isaac down for a short period of time. And then lastly, he can summon 1 to 2 scythes that will chase Isaac around the room until they are destroyed. You can destroy all the scythes that spawns in general, but it's really only recommended to destroy the ones that chase you, as the others can be pretty easily sidestepped. However, when he does the 4 scythes move, it can make sense to destroy the scythes that's closest to you to reduce load. In phase 2, Death gets off his horse and starts roaming the room, occasionally spawning 2 knights. The horse continuously flies across the room horizontally, and after every time it exits the screen, it comes back into the screen on the other side. Its charging pattern goes along 3 3 paths, with it switching paths every time it goes off screen and comes back on. Unlike what I've been doing in this footage, what you want to do with this horse, after it passes you, you want to go into the exact lane it just moved in, because that's where you know you're going to be safe. You also don't need to immediately take care of these knights, as the horse has a tendency to pick them off itself. So while it can make sense to crowd control, the horse usually does that for you. You really just want to take care of death as fast as possible and keep an eye on the horse, and then after you're done with death, take out the horse. Black death is 15% larger than regular death and has 25% more HP. Other than that, it's a very similar fight. Instead of the 2 scythes, he summons 2 kamikaze leeches, which will charge at you if they make eye contact with Isaac in any of the cardinal directions, so you want to take care of them as fast as possible. Instead of knights, he's going to spawn red maws, which will charge at Isaac as well and burst into 4 tiers upon death. Death himself on this champion version is not really any more threatening at all, but the mobs are quite a bit more dangerous, so be careful to not get hit by those and make sure to crowd control them as fast as you can. Conquest can ascend off screen and summon 8 to 10 light beams that will hit random spots, generally aiming for Isaac. These light beams announce themselves with little fade-in animations. Only once they turn into the big beam are they really going to damage Isaac. Note that this is only a thing since Repentance. Before Repentance, these light beams are just going to hit random spots on the map without any warning, and if you get hit, that's just bad luck. After the light beam attack is done, Conquest will re-enter the screen either from the left or the right, whichever Isaac is furthest away from. Conquest can charge horizontally towards Isaac, going off screen and re-entering the screen from the opposite side. When he does, he's going to be accompanied by 7 to 8 identical copies of himself, which all share his health bar, and he's going to charge across the screen trying to hit Isaac. For this attack, you want to stay as far away as possible from the side that he's going to enter from, so you have maximum time to react. Lastly, Conquest can fire 4 fast-traveling homing projectiles in all cardinal directions. You can easily avoid these by staying in ordinal directions from him. There's always a little bit of downtime that you have to attack him in between his moves. As you fight him more and more, you're going to get more of a feel for how long this downtime is. You should be trying to attack him in the downtime, and then when you know he's ready an attack, make sure to get into one of the ordinal directions from him. The Headless Horseman consists of 2 entities, the head and the horse, and they perform attacks independently from one another. The body moves around the room and periodically shoots an ipecac shot at you, which also leaves behind a red puddle of damaging creep. The head occasionally fires 3 projectiles at Isaac, or it can start charging across the room similarly to how Death's horse behaves, going into 3 lanes and charging across the screen 3 different times before coming to a halt again. Most of the time, the Headless Horseman is really just an afterthought because he has a fairly low amount of HP and usually dies pretty fast. The tricky part about this guy is that he can show up on any floor, including basement 1. He does a full heart of contact damage no matter where you encounter him, and he can be incredibly tricky to fight on low damage. So really, most of the time, you're just going to be hoping to not find this guy too early. If you ever have the displeasure of encountering one of the early Headless Horseman fights, make sure to try and stay in a similar area at all times, so the ipecac shots and resulting creep don't limit your movement too much. Either way, if the body wants to be a jerk and lock you in, this is going to be a really tough fight. Make sure to try and get rid of the body first because it limits your movement the most, and good luck if you find this guy early. The Fallen is a special boss that can only appear after Isaac has entered at least 1 devil deal through any means. He moves around the room randomly in cardinal and ordinal directions and occasionally fires 2 bursts of tears at Isaac, the first of which consists of 3 tears, the second of which consists of 4. After a little scream, he starts chasing after Isaac at higher speed, and after taking a certain amount of damage, he fires 4 brimstone lasers in all cardinal directions. At 50% HP, Fallen splits into 2 mini versions of himself that move independently from one another but have the exact same patterns. When they do the tear attack at the same time, it can be a bit tricky to dodge. Other than that, focus on both of them and try and stay as far away as possible from them when one of them starts firing their tears. Dangle is the first of our Afterbirth bosses. Whenever he does a whistle, that is followed by him spawning 2 little dips and then shooting 3 projectiles at you. When he puffs up his cheeks like that, that means he's going to do 2 long dashes towards Isaac. These dashes leave behind slippery brown creep that doesn't damage you. Also, please note the dash attack does not kill the mobs that Dangle spawns in, unlike other bosses which constantly kill their own mobs. Dangle actually leaves his alive. Whenever Dangle does his dash attack, he has a chance to place one of his corn mines as he does, which instantly explodes, poisoning him in the process. When he does a poison dash attack like that, he will also leave behind poison creep, which does damage Isaac upon touching it. And sometimes Dangle will squish himself together like that and just fire 3 shots at Isaac. Dangle is really not very different from Dingle. The only thing you need to watch out for is to keep your distance when he gets ready for an attack, because those dips will easily get pushed into you. Other than that, the dash attacks are easily sidesteppable, as is the triple shot attack. And if you have your distance as Dangle does the triple shot attack, you should also easily be able to just step in between the shots. Also, since Dangle is another poop-based boss, the flush just one-shots him and leaves behind 6 little dips. Turtlings are basically just a reskin of the Gurglings. They charge at you whenever you line up with them in one of the cardinal or ordinal directions, and when they do, they leave behind the same slippery brown creep that Dangle does. After the Turtlings hit a wall, they can do one of 2 things at random. Option 1, they can summon 4 brownie corns, which they shoot in all cardinal directions. Option 2, they can fart, knocking back everything that's close to them. One more thing to note, the Turtlings will get stuck on obstacles, may that be rocks in the environment or even the little dips that they summon themselves. And they can even get stuck on each other. As for fighting these guys, similar tips apply as with Gurglings. If you can somehow hit them from a diagonal angle, you should do that as to not aggro them. Try and kill the little dips as much as you can, but be aware that they will summon a lot of them, and if you're on a low crowd controllable build, then you might struggle to actually keep them in check. That being said, keep in mind that Turtlings have very low base HP, so it might be an idea to just focus them down first. The spawn limit for the little dips is 8, so if you can somehow avoid those, then that is definitely a viable route to take. Little Horn will always try to keep a certain distance from you and can do one of 6 things. He can spit a black ball at you, which constantly homes in on Isaac until it's destroyed. He can open up a hole underneath himself that he jumps into and pops up in a random spot in the room. He can create a hole under himself that moves towards Isaac. He can also jump into a hole underneath himself, popping up in a random spot in the room, leaving behind a troll bomb. When he does that, he repeats this move 3 to 5 times. He can toss a bomb or troll bomb into a hole underneath him, which then pops up near Isaac, and if it's a super troll bomb, starts chasing him. And lastly, he can throw between 3 and 5 pitfalls onto the ground, which move outwards and damage Isaac if he gets hit by them. As for fighting this guy, the main objective, as always, is to keep your distance. When he spawns one of the black balls, you want to take him out as soon as possible. They don't have a lot of HP, and they're going to annoy you for the entire fight if you don't take him out. If you keep your distance, you're going to see the holes that are coming towards you coming from a mile away. It's going to be really easy to sidestep them. The bomb attack generally is very easy to dodge because the bombs take a while to explode, and it's very easy to outrun them. Also note that as of Repentance Plus, Little Horn only takes 25 damage from his own bombs as opposed to 100, so it's going to take a lot longer for him to bomb himself to death, which he did pretty regularly in Repentance and sooner, but he still tends to deal enough damage to himself over the course of the battle, and your own bombs are still going to do the full 100 points of damage. The Black Champion version of Little Horn is like the easier little brother of his. All he does is try to avoid Isaac. Every once in a while he's going to teleport around in his holes, but he does not attack you with pits, troll bombs, or mega troll bombs. All he does is spawn the black balls more frequently that chase you. The same strategies apply. Take care of the balls as fast as possible, and you're really not going to be in any danger against this guy because he also tries to move away from you. The orange version of Little Horn is a bit more tricky. Instead of regular troll bombs, he's going to spit and throw hot bombs at you, which also deal contact damage upon touching them. Every hot bomb also leaves behind a fire that deals a half heart of damage if you touch it. The bombs, if they hit you with their explosion radius, will deal a full heart of damage to you. As for fighting this guy, keep in mind that you can destroy the red fires he spawns by just damaging them. But most importantly, every time he tosses a hot bomb into the floor, stop moving. It's very easy to just run instantly into the bomb that's being tossed at you because you don't know where it's going to come out of. So make sure to not move every time he gets ready to toss a bomb into the ground, and you're going to be fine. Ragman starts out the fight by just running after Isaac. Seriously, that's all he does at the start. While he's chasing you, he will randomly do one of 3 things. He can stop and randomly fire 1, 3, or 5 homing bullets at you. He can toss his head towards Isaac, which will roll around for a bit and then turn into a Ragman's Ragling. While the head rolls around, the headless part of Ragman will randomly fire homing tears in random directions. There's a spawn limit of 4 of these, and worth noting is also that as soon as he has at least one of them, he will actually stop chasing Isaac and chase around the Ragling. Raglings leave leave behind a Ragling's remains on the floor, which is also limited to a total of 4 in the room. The heads have 25 HP and can be killed during the rolling animation. If you do this, Ragman is going to be much more likely to toss another head right away. While the heads are still rolling around, damage is also shared between them and Ragman. And lastly, Ragman can do this scream where he recovers 10 HP and also revives all the Ragman's Raglings in the vicinity. Ragman is a weird one in so far that he kind of deviates from the strategy that I usually recommend. For most bosses, I usually tell you guys to take care of the mobs as soon as possible. With Ragman, it's a bit weird. You need to look at your DPS and you need to see how easy you can crowd control the Raglings. And if you can do that easily, then you should always prioritize them. But there's certainly going to be builds that are too weak to actually crowd control these guys, and at that point you might just have to focus down Ragman. Once again, if you keep your distance, you're going to be safe from the homing shots, and for as long as you don't get hit by those, you should be kind of fine. The Raglings are kind of annoying, especially once they start chasing you down, but at least you'll get Ragman off your case when he's chasing around his own Raglings. Red Ragman, try saying that 3 times fast, does not fire homing bullets, but instead he constantly spawns little Raglings and resurrects them. The strategy for fighting this guy is really just taken to the extreme from basic Ragman. If you can't deal with the crowd control spawns, you're just gonna have to deal damage to him directly. Funnily enough, this guy has a bit of potential to be the worst boss in the game because there are seeds out there where Eden starts with so little damage that he just can't get past the healing of this guy. Black Ragman is the exact opposite of the other two. He does not summon Raglings. The resurrection attack is instead replaced by him firing 3 arcing bullets in the direction of Isaac. He can also fire 1, 3, or 5 homing bullets, and when he throws his head off, instead of a Ragling, he's going to summon 1 or 2 little spiders, which you can easily take care of. For this Ragman, you definitely want to crowd control because the little spiders have basically no HP. But overall, this is definitely the easiest iteration of Ragman, as his adds have barely any HP and the attacks he does are also not very threatening. Keep your distance from this guy whenever he screams and you're going to be okay. The Stain starts in the center of the room, burrows underground and becomes invincible, and then slowly moves towards Isaac. Once he's close enough to you, he pops out of the ground and he performs 1 of 3 attacks. Number 1, after popping up, he sends out 2 tendrils to the left and right, leaving damaging creep on the ground. Number 2, he can spawn 2 chargers with a maximum of 3 being able to be present at the same time. And lastly, when he pops out mouth first like this, he can fire 2 barrages of tears in all directions. The first one starting out fast and slowing down, the second one starting out slow and speeding up. Like every boss that spawns adds, you want to take care of those first. When he pops up, you always want to make sure you're not to his left and right, so you're safe from the tentacles, tendrils, whatever. Whenever he does the mouth first tear barrage attack, stay as far away as possible, as the tears spread out pretty far and it's very easy to dodge them. Gray Stain is really not much different from regular Stain. Instead of chargers, he spawns round worms, also for a maximum of 3 at the same time. He does do the tendrils attack, but he will never do the tear barrage attack. Other than that, it's the exact same boss, the same tips apply. He doesn't have more HP, he doesn't have less HP, it's just the same. Take care of the adds and use the breaks he takes between his attacks to damage him. Forsaken is actually an interesting boss in so far that he always does the same stuff in the same order. He starts off the fight by spawning a Bony and going invisible and just floating through the room. And for as long as the Bonies are alive, he will periodically spawn more of them and then going back to invisible. Once all the Bonies are dead, he will float into the center of the room and do a triple brimstone attack, which rotates either clockwise or counterclockwise. And after that, he's going to stay corporeal for a while where you can damage him, until he finally spawns Bonies again and goes invisible. Once he's below 30% of his max HP, he will also spawn 2 Bonies at a time. 2 more things to note are that while he's invisible, he will not actually deal contact damage to you and you can pass through him. If he ever manages to spawn 4 Bonies at the same time, he will actually do a faster version of the Brimstone Beam with 3 lasers going out as per usual, but them rotating much faster and clearing out all the Bonies. Black Forsaken is not much different from the regular one either. Instead of white Bonies, he spawns black Bonies, which explode upon death, so watch out for that and don't get too close to those. Once you clear out all the black Bonies, he will not do the Brimstone attack and he will instead spawn 4 dank death heads that move diagonally through the room, damaging you on contact. After going invincible for a few seconds, he will go back to being visible again, and you can damage him then until he spawns another black bounty and goes invisible again. Fighting these guys is really not complicated. You want to clear the ads as fast as possible so they go vulnerable faster, and then you just damage them, and as they don't have a whole lot of health, they're usually going to die really quickly. More so than with other bosses, it's your highest priority on this one to clear the ads. As you can see, you're going to get pretty quickly overwhelmed, especially on Black Forsaken if you don't do that. And once again, he's on a cycle and he's only going to start becoming vulnerable if you clear out the ads. So definitely focus these first. The Frail is the undead version of Pin, and that's important because he's literally Pin in phase 1. He just jumps at you. Unlike Pin, he generally over or undershoots. He's not as accurate, and sometimes he also sticks his head out and just looks at you. In phase 2, he gains some additional attacks. When he jumps, he fires 4 tiers in diagonal directions. Those 4 tiers also then split into 4 more tiers each, which randomly either split into diagonal or ordinal directions. He'll also occasionally stick his butt out and fire white tiers in all directions, which then also leave white slowing creep. When he sticks his head out, he can do one of 2 things. A, he can fire a brimstone laser, which then rotates behind Isaac and tries to hit him as you dodge it. Or B, he can emerge his head and fire 2 quick non-moving brimstones after Isaac before going underground again. After performing any of these moves where he sticks his head or his tail out, he will always re-emerge from the exact same spot that he did that attack from. As for fighting this guy, phase 1 should be non-issue and shouldn't be getting you any trouble because it's literally Pin. For phase 2, you want to keep your distance when he comes out of the ground so you have enough time to react to the splitting tiers. Whenever he sticks his head or butt out, you want to stay far away. The white tier attack can't really hurt you if you're at a distance because the tiers usually land pretty close. However, if he does the brimstone attack, you want to make sure to run in circles around him so the brimstones don't hit you. No matter if it's going to be the quick firing attack or the one that follows you, as long as you run in circles around his head, you're going to be fine. Also make sure that whenever he finishes one of the head first or butt first attacks, you stay as far away as possible from his original spot. Since you'll know exactly where he comes from, it's going to be very easy to keep your distance. I did not bother to record the black champion version of the Frail because the only difference is that he starts in phase 2 and he has 200 HP. It's literally the same boss as regular Frail, except he has 1 less phase. Brownie is a 2-stage boss that can do a few things. He can do a short distance spin. After a little bit, he stops and ends the attack with a fart that just pushes Isaac back. As he does this move, he leaves brown creep, which is slippery but doesn't damage Isaac. Sometimes he also ends with leaving a corn mine. Every time Brownie takes damage, he spawns a little brownie corn. If he takes a large amount of damage in a short amount of time, he spawns many of them. Those are susceptible to his attacks and can be destroyed by them. When he does a spin attack and leaves behind corn mines, Isaac can destroy those corn mines for a poison explosion. That explosion can also poison Brownie. Note that a sliding poison Brownie will leave behind green damaging creep instead of the brown slippery creep. Instead of the spinning move, he can also do a sliding move where he bounces off of walls. And he can do this jump attack where he jumps around the room 4 to 6 times, shooting corn in random directions. One more thing to note, Brownie's moves can destroy his own ads, but every time he does, he actually regains 3 HP. As you can see in this clip, he's going to gain back HP every time he destroys a little guy, so make sure to crowd control them. How difficult Brownie is going to be for you oftentimes largely depends on how much AoE you have. The more of these Brownie corns you can destroy as fast as possible, the easier this is going to be. In general, I would advise to keep your distance. He does a lot of slow spinning and sliding moves that you can use to get some damage in. When he does the jump attack shooting random corn at you, then you should probably stay away from him to have time to react. That being said, poisoning him is a great way to deal some damage to him, as the poison is going to do residual damage. Just be careful about the green creep while he is poisoned. Once Brownie falls to below 25% health, he degrades into a 75 HP dangle. This guy behaves exactly the same way as it did in Basement, so we're not going to talk about how to fight this guy again. The black champion version of Brownie is almost the exact same as the base form. He's going to do the exact same attacks, except instead of Brownie corns, he's going to spawn chargers. He also can't absorb these to restore his HP. He also generates black slowing creep instead of the brown slippery one when he slides around. However, when he's poisoned, he is still going to generate green damaging creep. When he falls below 25%, he changes into 2 dank squirts, which are arguably easier than the Brownie that spawns from the base form. Just make sure to kill those guys in time before they slide for you, and you're gonna be fine. One last thing to note, like any poop-based boss, Brownie is one-shot by the flush, leaving behind just a few dips for you to kill, and you've won the boss fight. Bighorn alternates between attacking with his arms and his head. When the fight starts, he buries underground and creates 2 to 3 small holes. Every hole has the chance to spawn an arm, which can do one of 5 things. It can throw 3 bombs in a spread towards Isaac. It can slap the ground 3 times while moving towards Isaac. It can toss a single troll bomb directly at Isaac. Please note that every troll bomb tossed by Bighorn also has a chance to instead be a haunt bomb or a mega troll bomb. And lastly, he can hold up Little Horn, which spits out 3 dark balls in quick succession that follow Isaac around until destroyed. When Bighorn sticks his big head out, he can do one of 2 things. First of all, he has a chance to do nothing. Yep, that's right, he can just do straight up nothing, stay there for a bit, be damaged, and pop his head back in. On the occasions where he does attack you, he will either spit 1, 2, or 3 dark balls at you. If he spits 1 ball, that ball is gonna follow around Isaac until destroyed, similar to the dark balls from Little Horn. If he spits 2 balls, those will move diagonally through the room, bouncing off walls, but never homing in on Isaac. And lastly, if he spits 3, 2 of them will move diagonally through the room, and 1 will be homing in on Isaac. After spitting out the dark balls, there's a brief period where you can slide bombs into Bighorn's mouth. If you manage to do so, it's going to explode inside him, dealing 100 damage, as a bomb does, and it's going to stun him for a really long time, so you can do a lot of damage this way to him. As for fighting tips, try to crowd control the dark balls as much as possible, because those will be the biggest pain for you. Dodge the bombs, and after every attack and before every attack, there's a brief period of time where it's pretty easy to damage Bighorn. The bomb move is unfortunately a bit impractical because you have to stand underneath him, and that's where he spawns the dark balls. So if you have the health to spare, that's a quick way to get an easy bit of damage in, but I would not recommend it. Rag Mega is a very great example of a very simplistic boss design that can be really annoying. Rag Mega floats around the room diagonally, protected by those 3 purple balls around him, which are completely impervious to damage. Every once in a while, he's going to spawn a Ragling, which upon death leaves behind a few bandages. Occasionally, he will curl up into a ball of bandages where he becomes completely impervious to damage for a short period of time. When Rag Mega takes enough damage, and if you don't kill him accidentally, he will release his 3 purple balls to follow around Isaac. He'll release one of them at 25% HP lost, one at 50 and one at 75. And occasionally, he will shoot out these 3 purple beams, which will revive the little Raglings if they collide with the remaining Rags. That's really all there is to this guy, yet he can still be one of the most obnoxious boss fights because he goes invincible for so long. He blocks a lot of shots with the purple balls, and the purple balls in general are just really obnoxious. Try to run in circles around the arena so the things don't catch up to you, and make sure to go for damage whenever you have the opportunity. Due to his low base HP, he's not going to be a tough boss to kill once you get that damage in. The problem really lies with him becoming invulnerable so much, and then having a bunch of enemies chasing you around at the same time. There are really 2 types of Ragman fights, those in which you have a piercing weapon and those in which you don't. If you have piercing, this guy is much more of a piece of cake because the purple balls can't really mess with you. And if you don't have piercing, well, you're gonna be in for the long game. Sister V's always show up as a pair and do a bunch of cool tag team attacks. They can jump to the sides of the stage, either top, bottom, or left, right, and fire Mega Satan blasts at each other, which collide in the center of the room. They can do a rolling attack, where they curl up to balls similar to the cage, and roll diagonally through the room, bouncing off walls, but at a much slower pace. One of them always leaves a trail of brown, non-damaging slippery creep, while the other one leaves a trail of green damaging creep. However, those despawn so fast that you should really never get hit by them realistically. One of them will always stop earlier than the other, and then face Isaac to either shoot a Mega Blast at him or a Cone of Tears consisting of 2 to 4 lines of 3 to 5 projectiles. And lastly, they can also spawn 2 Vs together. When one Sister Vs is killed, the other one becomes enraged for the remainder of the battle. The enraged Sister Vs will not perform the jumping attack anymore. The one that you just saw was queued before it became enraged. It will only do the rolling attack, which is capped off either by a Mega Blast or by the Cone Tier attack. Also, the remaining Sister Vs will always leave a green trail of damaging creep. Even if you kill the green creep spawning Vs first, and the brown one is remaining, it will shift to the green creep. Other than that, it's the same fight, it moves a bit faster. But what I do like about this fight is that it's customizable in a way. If you prefer to fight 2 of the slower guys, you can try and dish the damage out evenly between the 2. But if you prefer to only fight 1 guy that also doesn't have to jump attack, you can just focus fire 1 dude and enrage the other. The choice is yours, whichever you like better. Either way, you just want to predict their attacks. It's a very easy pattern. They always shoot brims at Isaac after doing an attack. and the rolling move is also very predictable. So keep your distance, get your damage in, and go for whichever strategy you prefer, 1vs or 2. Matriarch is the bane of my existence and probably the boss I am most worried about facing whenever I have a mediocre run. She starts out hopping around the room randomly, performing one of the following attacks. She can spawn fistuloids that orbit her, she can shoot a long-range blood projectile towards Isaac that leaves red creep on the ground. After breathing in for a short time, she can shoot 8 chopper projectiles in all cardinal and ordinal directions, which will then return to her. As the fight progresses, she can spawn a maximum of up to 4 fistuloids that can orbit her. If you get close to her, one of the fistuloids is going to start charging you. However, only one of them can charge you at the same time, while the other orbit her to protect her. When destroyed, every fistuloid will shoot a little chopper shot at Isaac, and a new fistuloid will start charging Isaac. Note that Matriarch loses 30 HP every time she summons a fistuloid, so that's at least a nice little way of dealing damage to her. I wish you could see the health bar of her, but I think it's pretty apparent that she's already lost a bunch of health without me attacking her in this clip. Unfortunately, I kept that PNG from my live streams on top of there, and I can't really edit it out, so please excuse that, but I think it's pretty apparent that she lost some HP. After taking 140 damage, she will spawn one little fistula that moves around the room diagonally. Then she will spawn another after taking another 100 damage, and then she will proceed to spawn 2 little fistulas every time she takes an additional 100 damage. Please note that the first 2 single fistula spawns have only been a thing since Repentance, so if you play an earlier version, she will always spawn 2 fistulas upon taking 100 damage. After taking 340 damage, Matriarch becomes enraged and does the little fistuloid spawning attack, where she spawns a lot of them in quick succession. These will lose health very rapidly, they're flashing red, and once they die, they will shoot their chopper projectiles at Isaac immediately. After this attack, she returns back to her base state and does all the attacks that were described beforehand, and then after taking enough damage, she will do this attack again. Lastly, after losing about 75% of her max HP, she will go into phase 4, where she just turns into a regular old chub. She will always enter the state charging in a random direction and spawn a bunch of chargers and fistulas alongside her. After taking care of all the ads, you'd think this would just be a plain old chub fight, but do not be fooled, this is not a plain old chub, this is a Matriarch chub. The key difference being that you should not be feeding this chub bombs, as she'll just spit them right back at you and probably hit you with them. Matriarch, in my opinion, is one of the hardest bosses in the entire game. This lady's got everything. She's got ads that even shoot at you in death. So even if you take care of them immediately, they'll still give you a goodbye present. The ad spit tears at you as well, all the while she harasses you at the same time. The main piece of advice I can give you for this boss is to always keep a close eye on her, try to take out the ads as fast as possible, and be ready to dodge the little chub attacks. The little chubs are always only fired into the cardinal direction, so when you see one pop, you want to move diagonally from them. Furthermore, you want to try and not stand cardinally and ordinally from her so you don't get hit by her chub attacks at the same time. The best opportunity to deal a bunch of damage to this boss is probably during her enraged attack, but to do that, you actually need to deal a bunch of damage to her. Try to get her between her attack phases when she hops around the room, and try to keep your distance as well once she explodes into chub, because she's going to be charging and she's going to be very fast. Take out the ads as fast as possible in every wave of this fight to avoid being overloaded by enemies at any point in time, and once she turns into chub, it should be smooth sailing. Just remember to never put a bomb in her mouth. Baby Plum is the first Repentance boss that we're talking about this video. And fun fact to start with, Baby Plum will use her idle times floating towards Isaac and then circling him at a certain distance as if she were an orbital. But anyway, Plum also has 3 different attacks that she will use against Isaac periodically. She can spit tears diagonally while launching herself through the room in the opposite direction of where she spits. During this attack, she's also a lot more affected by knockback. She can slam into the ground, firing 2 rings of projectiles away from her. She also leaves a small puddle of damaging creep in the space where she stomps. The outer ring consists of 8 tiers moving in all cardinal and ordinal directions quickly, while the outer ring consists of 14 slow-moving projectiles. And lastly, Baby Plum can do a little twirl towards Isaac while sending out a spiral of tears. The spiral always starts pointing downwards and then moves into the direction that's closest to Isaac. As for fighting this guy, as always, keep your distance, wait for an attack, then use the downtime to attack in. If I can give you one piece of advice, do not attack Plum with any knockbacking attacks while he's doing the charge, because you will mess yourself up. Plum will also explode into a ring of tears upon death, so make sure to keep your distance when she dies. Also, one more thing about Baby Plum, if she doesn't take damage for 30 seconds, she will wave at the screen and then just fly away and abandon the fight. Doing this will yield the plum flute for you. This is the way you have to unlock this item, so do this once to unlock the thing. Other than that, I would not really recommend doing this because A, it doesn't really make the fight easier for you, and B, it rewards you with a really crappy item instead of a boss item. Also, note that you can only do this in Plum's boss room. This is not possible in any room where she naturally spawns, nor is it possible when she spawns in greed mode. Bombino usually spawns boxed in by a bunch of rocks, which you can't see in this manually spawned one. After he breaks out of that rock cage, he usually has 3 different attacks. He can shoot poop bombs out of his butt right at Isaac. You can easily sidestep those. When you're to the left or right of Bombino, he will do 2 swipe attacks. The first one into the direction of Isaac, the second one away. After that, he slams the ground and fires 8 rock projectiles in all cardinal and ordinal directions, as well as 4 wave of rocks in all diagonal directions. If Bombino slams into a wall with his attack, he will shoot out a few rocks, and rocks will be falling off the ceiling, indicated by shadows. He gets momentarily stunned and you can deal some damage to him. Lastly, if you're aligned with him vertically, he will charge at you and into the wall and do the same rock shooting and rock falling move that he does when he slams into the wall with his sideways swipe. In terms of strategy, Bombino is an interesting one because I feel like this is the type of boss that completely wrecks new players when they face him the first time, but then when you really take a look at him, you realize he's not even that difficult. You can constantly bait Bombino into either doing a sideways swipe or a down charging attack, and since you know that he will always do a set move depending on your position to him, he is very easy to manipulate in whichever move you want him to do. The bomb move can be very easily sidestepped, and the constant stuns on him you can easily use to get damage in on this opponent. A few more things to note: Bombino will do a full heart of damage with all of his attacks. He will also pick up coins over fighting you, and if he ever picks up 12 cents worth of coins, he spawns you an item from a set pool of items. Bombino will also not be able to pick up sticky nickels, so if you somehow ever get one to spawn in the Bombino fight, he will be stuck forever trying to pick up the coin, and you won't be able to distract him, so he's just perma-stunned and you can kill him from there. Reap Creep at the start of the fight will jump to the top wall. In phase 1 he has 2 attacks. He can fire a vertical stream of tears following Isaac's movement but stopping close to the wall so you can never get hit to the far side of the map. Or he can spawn a wall creep either on the right, left or bottom wall. After losing 33% of his max HP, he goes into phase 2, which is indicated by the head rotating. In this phase, he can either spawn a trite or 3 to 4 spiders. He can also shoot a wide spread of space projectiles. And lastly, he can fire a large spread of disorganized tears, similarly to Monstro, but with much larger tears. After losing another 33% of his max HP, he goes into phase 3, which is once again indicated by the head rotating. He can slam into the left or right wall, resulting in a bunch of rocks falling from the ceiling, as well as 3 to 4 spiders. If you fight him in the mine, these will instead be rock spiders. He can charge up a moderate amount of time and then fire a big brimstone laser downwards, which will again follow Isaac. Like in the first phase, this attack will follow you around, but it will never make it all the way to the wall, so you will always be safe to the far left or far right. Additionally, he can also charge for a longer period of time, afterwards firing 2 brims diagonally to the left and right each. The brims are going to close in towards Isaac in the middle, but they will never fully reach him, so either way you're going to be safe if you just stay right underneath him. The important part is to differentiate between which brim is coming towards you. There's 2 ways you can do this. In my opinion, the simplest way is to just stay outside range of the big brimstone. If you stay far enough to the inside to the point where the big brim won't hit you, and the double brim won't hit you, then you're going to be safe from any of the 2 attacks. The other way to do it is to listen carefully. The 2 attacks have 2 very different charge up sounds, so if you know how to tell them apart, you also know which laser is going to come at you. The laser attack is really the only tricky one about this boss, so with that knowledge you should be fine if you just keep crowd controlling the ads. The Pile can do one of 4 things. He can spawn a Bony, he can burrow underground and then quickly pop up elsewhere, firing 5 bones at Isaac. He will generally aim for the area that Isaac is standing in, but as he burrows underground, you can pretty much tell the general direction of which he moves in. And as you do that, you want to move away from the spot that he is roughly going to pop up, because the further you get away from this spread of bones, the further they're going to be apart and the easier they will be to dodge. He can summon spikes in all cardinal directions that move from the outside of the map towards the Pile. And lastly, Pile can do this move where he charges towards Isaac until he hits a wall. As he hits the wall, he shoots out a volley of bones as well as rocks in all diagonal directions that are open. As for fighting this guy, this is one of the few bosses where keeping your maximum distance is deadly, as you are not going going to be able to react to the spike attack in time. What you want to do is you want to keep like a mid-sized distance from him, so you have a decent middle ground between dodging his short range and his long range attacks. When he does the borrowing attack, you want to keep a close eye on where he moves and get as far away as possible from that, like said. But other than that, keep a mid-sized distance. He has a lot of dead space where he doesn't do anything that you can use to attack him. If you can fire diagonally, that makes this guy much easier, but obviously you won't always have that luxury. Just keep a small distance and use the pauses, and this guy is not going to be an issue. Rainmaker slowly floats towards Isaac and performs 1 of 4 attacks. He can summon a big bubble above his head and then burst it to fire tears in random directions. He can summon horizontal lines of 6 tier each that start floating towards Isaac from the outside to the inside. He can summon a ring of projectiles and then shoots it at Isaac. He always shoots 2 tiers at once and they will be on opposite sides. And lastly, he can do this move where he twirls around towards Isaac, summoning tears that will then after a few seconds float towards Isaac. At the end of this move, he always shoots out a ring of 8 tiers in all cardinal and ordinal directions. Despite being a chapter 1 boss, Rainmaker deals a full heart of contact damage. As for fighting this guy, your best friend is gonna be to run in a wide circle around the arena every time he attacks you. His attack pattern is a bit weird, but basically every attack he does can be avoided by just running in a circle, so the tears that get shot at you are easily sidestepped. A lot of the time, he doesn't leave you very much downtime to attack him, so as you're running in a circle around him, you're just going to try to get some shots in on him as you run by. All in all, this guy shouldn't give you much trouble because he's a chapter 1 boss. And one more thing to note, if you somehow happen to have Vade Retro, as I do here, in this fight, you can actually insta-kill Rainmaker at half his HP by just pressing spacebar with that item. Min Min is a 2-phase boss. In phase 1, she slowly floats towards Isaac and occasionally shoots out willows. The willows will fly towards Isaac and then shoot a projectile at him before returning to Min Min and circling her to protect her. Once she reaches the maximum of 4 willows, she will periodically push them out to shoot 3 tiers away from Willow with no particular aim before returning to her to circle her. One more thing worth mentioning is that willows do not deal contact damage to Isaac. I couldn't find any information on when Willow splits into phase 2, but judging from this footage, it looks like about 33%. She sheds her husk and gains 3 new attacks, which she can use in addition to the other 2. Her maximum amount of willows is also increased to 7 in this phase. Min Min can disappear underground and create several groups of lights on the ground. One group at a time, willows appear from the lights, fire at Isaac, and then disappear again. She can cause all her circling willows to fire outward. And finally, she can send her orbiting ring of willows towards Isaac. After a few seconds of chasing Isaac, they return to Min Min. During both of these phases, her ring of willows constantly fires at Isaac, which means it is actually crucial for you to keep moving once again in a circle like with Rainmaker. Unlike Rainmaker, you can't just brainlessly run in a circle and avoid every attack this way. You got to keep a close eye on her for when she does the light show attack, as well as the attack where she fires bullets with all her willows on the outside. Min Min pauses between each one of her attacks, and you can use this time to get damage on her. Obviously, once again, there are 2 different Min Min fights, those where you have piercing and those where you don't. Unfortunately, because Min Min is such an early game boss, the latter is going to happen much more often. But to be honest, as long as you stay in motion, you shouldn't have too much trouble even with the stray shots from the ring, so try and crowd control as much as possible and focus your fire on Min Min to end the fight quickly. Little Blub diagonally floats around the room and periodically performs 1 of 4 attacks. He can spit out a single small leech, which will then proceed to chase Isaac. Little Blub will periodically spit out between 1 and 3 leeches, which will then start crawling towards Isaac. He can do a jump attack towards Isaac, where he sends out a burst of disorganized tears upon landing. And lastly, he can send out a burst of 6 streams of tears. Note that this attack in particular does a full heart of damage for whatever reason. Once Little Blob falls below 25% of his starting HP, he gains 1 new attack. He gets this jump attack where he jumps towards Isaac 3 to 5 times while also shooting tears in all cardinal and ordinal directions. Note that the cardinal shots also travel much faster than the ordinal shots. During his last phase, so below 25% HP, he much prefers this attack over all the others, but he does have the option to do the other attacks. As for fighting this guy, once again, you want to try and keep your distance, especially since that burst attack in phase 1 can deal a full heart of damage. Other than that, try to get shots in as much as possible. If you just constantly fire against this guy, he shouldn't be too much of a problem. It's going to be an easy way for you to keep crowd controlling, and crowd controlling is particularly important against this guy as he will be summoning mobs a lot. For the jump attack, you always want to move a short distance away from him. You know the tears are going to be fired out in the cardinal and ordinal directions, with the cardinal ones moving much faster. So you can take advantage of that by standing slightly diagonally from him whenever he lands, and then moving to the ordinal directions once the tears have passed you. Other than that, hit him as much as you can. There's going to be a lot of downtime, and the 25% phase, while difficult at times because of all the jumping, should be manageable as well, as long as you keep track of where the tears are going to shoot to. Also, one more thing to note, upon death, this guy spawns a fountain of tears as well as 2 to 4 small leeches, so you want to move as fast and as far away as possible from him to dodge those tears and to take care of those leeches once they move towards you. Wormwood starts by jumping at Isaac from a random pit in the room, all the while shooting 4 tears in all cardinal directions. Then he chases Isaac in a zigzag pattern for a bit before going underground again. He can also briefly pop his head out and shoot a group of disorganized tears at Isaac. Like Chubb, Wormwood will eat any bomb that's placed in his path while he chases you, which will then momentarily stun him and also deal a lot of damage to him. At 33% remaining HP, Wormwood will perform this attack where he pierces the ground underneath Isaac, creating holes in the process. He does that 3 to 5 times before charging out of the left or right side of the arena, which is indicated by a dust cloud in the space that he charges out from. Note that while he performs the stabbing move, he only takes 20% damage, and he can also never create holes in a way where it would trap Isaac. As for the fighting strategy, bombs are a great way to deal with Wormwood. The start of this fight is always a bit shaky for me because you can't actually tell which hole he emerges from. After the first jump though, Wormwood will always exit from the same hole that he entered. As for fighting him, making him eat a bomb is your best friend here, as bombs deal 100 damage and he only has 200 in total. When he does the stabby attack, keep moving and you should never get hit by that realistically. It's really not a difficult boss, especially since you know after the first jump exactly where he's going to come from. Get as much damage in as possible. Once he misses a jump on you, he's going to be very vulnerable and you should be able to easily kill him. Clog is stationary in the center of the room most of the time, but sometimes will spawn at the top of the room. Clog can spit out drips for a maximum of 4 being alive at the same time. It can shoot out 4 spiraling lines of projectiles, which have gaps in between them. This attack always either consists of slow-moving projectiles with very narrow gaps, or fast-moving projectiles with bigger gaps. Clock will also do a spin attack where he causes the water in the room to circulate around him, either clockwise or counterclockwise. This will cause all alive drips as well as Isaac to be shoved around the room in the according direction. And lastly, he can do this fart attack that sends out shockwaves that will push Isaac and any alive drips, as well as leave behind some poop on the ground. 2 more things worth noting: using butt bombs in the same room as the clog will actually not damage him, it will heal him, so avoid doing that. And as with other poop-based bosses, clog will also instantly die to the flush, leaving behind 4 to 6 dips. As for fighting this guy, crowd controlling really is your best friend here, as he can only do the spinning attack if he has at least 2 alive drips. So if you can try and crowd control these guys, you're going to be safe from the spinning move, which is by far his most dangerous move in my opinion. Other than that, when he does the tear attack, you want to stay as far away as possible from him and then use the downtime to get damage on him. Crowd control is important, but when he gets close to death, there is a real case to be made for just rushing damage, as all his drips die with him, so they all get flushed away as soon as Clog dies. So when you get to the end of the fight, you gotta make your choice on whether you want to push for damage on the boss or keep crowd controlling. Colostomia always starts the fight by launching a butt bomb in your face. After that, she does a short hop and slides into the closest cardinal direction towards Isaac. While she is sliding, she fires tears in both perpendicular directions. After filling up about 40% of the room with that gas, she then throws out a butt bomb again, which will cause all the gas in the room to explode if it is within its range. Colostomia will alternate between those 2 attacks until she falls below 50% HP, where she goes into phase 2. At the start of phase 2, the bag containing Colostomia explodes and she burrows into the ground, leaving behind a cloud of gas. From there, she can either toss 2 troll bombs in the general direction of Isaac, do a short hop where upon landing she shoots 8 tears in all cardinal and ordinal directions, and she can briefly poke out her butt and fart to create a large cloud of gas. Like in phase 1, that cloud also explodes if it gets hit by an explosion. As for fighting this boss, in phase 1, as she charges at you, you want to make sure that she doesn't fill too much of the room with gas clouds. It's very easy to trap yourself if you have her spin around in a circle around the room, so optimally try and have her go from left to right constantly. In phase 2, you want to keep your distance. She usually doesn't fill too much of the room before she throws a butt bomb, which you then want to push back at her to make sure she hits a gas cloud. And be aware of the projectiles that come at you every time she jumps. Other than that, keep your distance, go for the hits while she's on cooldown, which she actually has a lot of in phase 2. and this one shouldn't be a problem for you. Turtlet is a very simplistic boss. He moves around the room, loosely chasing Isaac while bouncing off of walls. Every once in a while, he's gonna curl together and then launch himself towards Isaac while spinning around his old tail, bouncing off of walls. Wherever this guy moves, he leaves brown slippery creep that doesn't hurt you. After taking enough damage, Turtlet splits into 2 separate pieces with the exact same behavior. They run around, they eventually huddle together to launch themselves. They do coordinate this attack, so they will always do it at around the same time, sometimes with like a 1-second delay or so. To fight them, try and stay as far away from them as possible. This gives you the most time to react to their launching attack when it's coming. It also makes it easier to predict where they're going to be bouncing to because you have more time to do your calculations. Other than that, probably use the launching attack to focus on dodging and try to go for attacks while they're just running around. And you're going to be fine against this one. This is not a very complicated boss, probably a bit more difficult than Larry Jr., but you shouldn't have too much issues with this one. Tough twins always spawn in pairs. They consist of 5 body segments as well as 1 head segment. At the start of the fight, they're both protected by a rock armor and untouchable. They cannot be damaged this way, and that's where those bomb dispensers in the room come into play. At the start of the fight, Isaac needs to destroy their rock armor to be able to damage him. You can use the bombs that spawn at infinitum in the boss room. You can also use your own bombs, but it's a bit of a waste since you have access to infinite anyway. While the head segments are still protected by rock armor, they spit out inks, which are the black flies, which upon death fire out 4 projectiles into the diagonal directions. Once the rock armor on the head segments get destroyed, they will instead spit out suckers, which are the red flies that shoot out tears upon death into the cardinal directions. The protected body segments don't really do anything. The vulnerable ones shoot out bloody shots similarly to boils from the cave's floors. One more thing to note about them is that they start out moving pretty slowly, and the more of their parts you uncover, as in the more rock armor you destroy, the faster every individual tough twin is going to move. Other than that, there's really not a whole lot to say about these guys. This is a very simplistic boss, so there's not a whole lot to do. You can play it super safe and try to keep your distance and literally only fight them with the free bombs that are provided in this fight. Like Larry Jr., the meme applies that this is the hardest boss in the game because his pattern is completely random and unpredictable. Either way, stay out of the way of the mouth and you should be fine, because that means you're not going to have any flies spawned close to you. Keep crowd controlling like with any boss that spawns more enemies, and there's not going to be too much trouble with this one. Hornfell is a really interesting boss. He has a unique boss room that has a bunch of doors on the sides, and whenever he randomly exits from one of them, he can do one of 5 things. He can throw 3 brimstone bombs out that shoot brimstones in all cardinal directions. He can toss 1 to 2 random bombs at Isaac, with each of them having a chance of being either a hot or a sad bomb. He can be accompanied by 2 bomb flies which circle him to protect him and then go for Isaac once he leaves the room. He can be accompanied by 1 to 2 decoys which have 4 HP each and burst into 6 troll bombs upon being touched or damaged. And lastly, he does this move where he follows the same track repeatedly over and over again while accelerating and throwing bombs. At the end of this, he gets sick and tosses 1 fireball that releases fire shots in all cardinal and ordinal directions. While he does all of these things, there will occasionally be other minecarts containing enemies such as Gurgles, Bonies, Faceless, Dani, or Quackies, or just fireplaces or TNT barrels. After taking enough damage, Hornfell will fall out of his minecart and run around for a bit until he disappears. In this phase, he doesn't actively attack you and just tries to get out. If you defeat him in time, he will either drop 3 bombs, boom, brimstone bombs, hot bombs, remote detonator, or sad bombs, and this is how you unlock brimstone bombs if you don't have them already. As for the strategy for this guy, first off, always stay very far away from the doors because he can and will spawn on top of you if you don't do that. He's got a lot of downtime where it's possible to go for damage for him, like a lot of his attacks don't last for very long and then he's kind of just in his minecart doing nothing. From the regular bombs, you want to run as far away as possible so they don't hit you in their blast radius. For the brim bombs, you want to try and gauge where the brimstone lasers are going to go. You basically just don't want to be in the cardinal and ordinal directions from them. The speed up attack usually makes it pretty hard to hit him. It's pretty impractical to try and hit him because you're going to get run over if you stand in his way, and if you don't stand in his way, it's kind of difficult to angle and time your shots in a way so they hit him. But he once again has a lot of downtime there once he does the vomiting thing. So in conclusion, use the downtime to your advantage, pay close attention to which bombs he throws at you, and also stay TF away from the decoys because you absolutely don't want these guys to burst. If they end up bursting anyway, once again, try to get as far away as possible from the troll bombs because they are extremely unpredictable with the random bomb timers. but you should be fine if you just keep your distance from any bomb that he tosses at you. Great Gideon is probably my least favorite boss in the entire game, and probably also the worst designed boss in my personal opinion. This is basically Greed mode the boss. He summons 6 waves of enemies that you have to defeat, and then he deactivates. Since this is a video about bosses and not about regular enemies, I'm not going to go into detail how to defeat each wave of enemies, but basically he just summons a bunch of critters. You want to take care of him, and while you do that, he can attack you with 3 different attacks. He can shoot a burst of flames down the center of the room, which means you just want to avoid this area for basically the entire fight if you can. This and all of his attacks for that matter have a very distinct charging sound, so every time you hear that, just avoid the center of the stage. Also note that every enemy that has a flaming version can and will be set on fire by this move, and trust me, he summons a lot of those. He can do a short inhale and then summon 5 projectiles in a cone pattern at Isaac. The middle projectile is a bit larger than the others and splits into 8 tiers, firing in all cardinal and ordinal directions after a few seconds. What I do to avoid this move is basically barely staying out of range to keep an eye on the tiers, and then when I see the big tier, I position myself in a way so I'm not in a cardinal and ordinal direction relative to it. And lastly, he can do this inhaling move where he basically creates a vacuum on himself that affects the entire room. Isaac is going to get slowly sucked towards him with rocks appearing in a reasonable distance from Isaac, and you're supposed to avoid those rocks. I personally found that having a rather low distance from him works best for this move, as it gives me personally the most time to react. Although the rocks I don't think are largely affected by where you are relative to him, so you gotta figure out which distance to Gideon works best for you. What I wouldn't recommend would be going to the far bottom of the room, because then you're not gonna see the rocks as they're gonna be spawning off screen. After the third wave is defeated, Gideon will send a wave of rocks down the center of the room, so you want to avoid that as well by staying to the left or the right. Those rocks will create some holes in the bottom, which will then also further make it more difficult for you to move through the room. There will always be holes in between there that you can slip through to go to the left or the right, so you will never be cut off from any side of the room by these. But that's basically the fight. Other than that, he just summons a bunch of dudes and you gotta kill them. After defeating all 6 waves, you don't even get to attack Gideon. You don't get to kill this guy, just as a final nail in the coffin for how badly designed this boss is. He doesn't even give you that satisfaction, and he just makes me want to punch that face. If you, however, are lucky enough to bring a Chaos card to the Great Gideon, and I was fortunately lucky enough here, I totally didn't hack it onto my character for demonstration purposes, you can toss the Chaos card at him and it will instantly kill Gideon, revealing Gideon's tomb. After killing all the remaining adds, that trapdoor opens, leading you to a unique crawl space that always contains 2 bats, a key, 2 golden chests, as well as 2 item room items. But most importantly, you'll have the satisfaction of having actually killed the Great Gideon. Singe will spend his idle time slowly moving towards the player. He always gets a special arena with a bunch of rocks as well as 4 damaging spiky rocks, and most of his attacks do affect those rocks. Singe can do a running move where he starts running either after Isaac or towards a spiky rock. At the end of this run, he will always do a large explosion that damages Isaac and also pushes away all the spiky rocks that might be close to him. If he's close to Isaac at the end of his run, he can also perform a short hop towards Isaac to gain some distance before doing the explosion. He can fart, leaving a cloud of explosive gas that, well, explodes if it gets caught in an explosion. After he loses a third and 2/3 of his max HP, he will charge up and do a large explosion attack, which launches him into the air. It creates a hole in the ground as well, and he will land on Isaac's position after a few seconds. Alongside him drops another spike ball, which brings the total up to 6 by the end of the fight. And lastly, upon death, Singe explodes, which also deals damage to Isaac if he gets caught in it, so make sure to keep your distance. As for fighting this guy, I suggest running away from him in a circle pattern around the room. Well, as much circle as is possible when there are rocks everywhere to impede your movement. That being said, as long as you stay in motion, you're probably going to be fine by that guy, and it's easy to run away from him and just shoot at him as you do. When he charges up for an explosion, you want to take note really quickly of where all the spike rocks are. It's usually very easy to evaluate where they're going to get launched to. So just stay out of a straight line between you, Singe, and the spike rocks, because otherwise you'll get hit by them every time he does an explosion. One more thing to note is that the spike rocks can technically be destroyed. Once he creates a hole in the ground, you can have him shove the rocks into that hole, and they will be lost until he does the next jump attack, where he will gain the rock back. However, if you can manage to land 2 of those rocks in the hole at the same time, one of them will be lost, as Singe is only going to be able to resummon one of the rocks every round. That being said, I do find this highly impractical to do, because it's going to take forever for him to do it, which is all time you could spend just hitting him instead, as this is not a difficult boss to dodge if you just stay in motion and run away from him. The shell is very similar to tough twins. They always spawn in a pair, but they move diagonally through the room instead of cardinal and ordinal directions. They constantly bounce off the wall, similarly to how the Hollow does it. However, unlike Hollow, if you get close to these guys, they will start steering into your direction. Like the tough twins, their bodies are completely invincible to damage and have to be damaged by explosions first to break open the bodies. Unlike tough twins, you can't actually break open the heads of these guys, and you have to break open the body pieces. Breaking open an end piece will reveal a flesh segment that constantly spits out little bomb flies at Isaac. If it's however a segment in the middle and not in the end, these will constantly be spitting 3 tears at Isaac. If a single flesh segment gets completely detached from its main body, it will not die like it would with other bosses of this type. Instead, it will just be stationary on the ground and keep doing its thing until it's destroyed. The head itself can also not be destroyed, not by bombs or anything else. What you have to do is you have to destroy all the body segments one after another, and then once they're all dead and only the head is left over, that's when the shell will die. You can also use the bombs in this fight to damage the flesh segments instead of hitting them with your tears or knives or whatever you have. There's really not a whole lot to say about this boss, as his movement can be easily anticipated. If you don't get in front of him, they will just move in a straight line every single time. They are very easy to redirect as well, so you can use that to your advantage if you want to, but generally I would say this is pretty impractical. The safest way to kill this guy is to just constantly chuck bombs at him, as every flesh segment is going to start attacking you individually. It's really easy to get caught in the crossfire here if you don't play this safe. So yeah, like I said, the safest way is keep picking up bombs, keep chucking them at them, and destroy them that way. If you feel like it, you can go in for damage against the flesh segments, but they will die to 1 bomb each, which means every segment needs to be bombed twice until it's done. One last thing, the shell in his invulnerable form is one of the only enemies that is completely immune to Plan C, so if you plan on using that for whatever reason, you cannot do that. Clutch is thematically one of my favorite bosses in the entire game. He spawns alongside 3 clickety-clacks, which he can randomly possess. Upon possessing them, they will shoot 8 bones in all cardinal and ordinal directions. If you deal enough damage to the possessed clickety-clack, he will move to the next one, or he will do it randomly over the course of the fight. Whenever you destroy one of his minions, it will create a purple flame that will stay there until he gets revived. As he's possessing them, they will also throw bones at you whenever you're lined up with them in any cardinal or ordinal directions. After all 3 clickety-clacks are destroyed, he will be ejected from them forcefully and stunned for a little bit, giving Isaac room to damage him. After Clutch drops below 25 HP, he will scream and destroy all the clickety-clacks, generating some bones that circle him loosely and block shots. In this phase, Clutch will only perform 1 attack, where he charges towards Isaac's position and then shoots out a volley of 6 purple flames in an alternating pattern. As for fighting this guy, diagonal shots are your best friend, because that means the clickety-clacks can't be damaging you. In general, you want to stay away from the cardinal and ordinal directions from them. You want to focus the guy that's possessed, of course, because the other 2 will be invulnerable, but that is sometimes pretty impractical. You can damage this guy as he's switching bodies, but that's a very short window to do it, and it's probably not going to work out for you. So what you want to do is you want to kill the clickety-clacks as soon as you can, because then he becomes vulnerable and you can damage him pretty easily. In phase 2, once again, I would advise you to go in a circle pattern to run away from him, either clockwise or counterclockwise, whichever is the most comfortable for you. If you can actually manage to position him close to a corner, as you can see, the purple fires actually have a very limited range, so if you stay far enough away from him during the purple fire attack, you're going to be safe from that. The Siren is a really cool boss. She usually starts off the fight with the singing move that charms all your familiars, and since this boss shows up on alt path, most of the time you're gonna have the floating knife that will be charmed by her, and then if you have any other familiars, they will too. So for example, if she steals your little Steven, that will be firing homing shots, and if she steals your little Brimstone, that'll be brimstone shots, and so on. Charmed familiars do deal contact damage, which is a bit tricky, because if you are between the Siren and your familiars, oftentimes you will take damage as they get pulled towards her, so make sure not to be between your familiars and her as she does that. After she steals your familiars, she floats around the room a bit as the familiars shoot at you. After a while, she will do that swiping attack towards you, also unleashing all the familiars towards Isaac. After those hit a wall, they burst into a bunch of tears and then return to Isaac if you don't drop their HP to 0. Every charmed familiar has 60 HP, and if they're destroyed prematurely, they will just move back to Isaac. If she steals less than 3 familiars from you, she will fill up the remaining slots with Siren minions. There's nothing special about these guys, they just behave like Brother Bobby with a lower fire rate. She can do a short swipe towards Isaac while releasing 5 projectiles in his direction. She can also do this screaming move where Isaac gets pushed away from her while she shoots out 9 rings of tears. Those rings will have holes in them that are generally directed in Isaac's direction, so you can slip through them, but if you stay far enough away from her, it's also going to be easy to avoid those. Upon death, the Siren burns up, leaving behind her skull as an obstacle in the room. The skull can be burned, and the first time you do that, you will unlock the Forgotten Lullaby trinket. Every subsequent time, you'll just get a turret to spawn. Okay, so this is where my video material is a bit incomplete, because there's one more move the Siren has that is noted on the wiki that I couldn't get her to do while recording this, and frankly, I don't remember ever seeing her do that. The wiki says Siren has a move where she sinks into the floor, becoming invulnerable, and chases Isaac, leaving a trail of black creep. After appearing, she swipes at Isaac, shooting a spread of 5 projectiles. I've recorded this bonus segment, and you'll see that she never does that move, and I don't think I've ever seen her do it in 4,000 hours of playing this game. So if there's footage anywhere, feel free to put it on YouTube and I'll link it in the video description. But for now, I don't have footage of that. Just keep in mind there might be or might not be a move like that that the Siren has. As for fighting her, you want to try and get your familiars back as much as possible, and in general, just unload as much damage on her as possible, because the longer this fight goes, the more you can get hit by a cheap shot from your familiars. Other than that, keep your distance when she does the ring attack and just go in and damage her whenever you have the chance. The Heretic is a 2-phase boss, even though the first phase really doesn't feel like a phase. He starts off with these 5 exorcists circling him that perform some sort of ritual to bring him in. During the summoning process, they are invulnerable. Afterwards, they turn into fanatics that chase you down. And the fight only really starts after you kill these fanatics. He's invulnerable in the meantime, transparent similarly to how the Haunt deals with it at the start of the fight. However, he still is able of dealing a full heart of contact damage to you. After dealing enough damage to each of the fanatics, they turn into pacers or gushers, and then after taking those out, you finally enter phase 2 of the fight, where the Heretic becomes damageable. In this second phase, he can randomly light up between 5 and 6 of the fireplaces before firing a purple brimstone that connects with all the fireplaces in the exact order that they've been lit up in. This is a particularly tricky move because you got to keep a close eye on the order in which the fireplaces light up in to make sure that you're not standing in the path of that brimstone. It's pretty tricky, but in general, the side areas are usually pretty safe, assuming that one of those fireplaces isn't lit up. One thing you can do is stand in one of the corners if those fireplaces are unlit. One more thing to note, if you can manage to put out a fireplace before the brimstone fires with an explosion, then it will not be connected to the brimstone laser. Heretic can dash off screen while going invisible before doing a series of bite attacks 4 times in a row where he swoops in from the left or the right side of the screen. As he does this move, he also tries and predicts Isaac's movement, so to try and chomp where Isaac's gonna be. The best way I found to avoid this is to continuously move up and down and switch directions a lot, as it will be difficult for Heretic's AI to predict your movements. And lastly, Heretic can hurl 7 purple projectiles in the air that will land where Isaac is standing at the time of them being thrown. Upon landing, they burst into a radial pattern of 6 purple fires. This one's a bit tricky because as those shots are being fired, you want to get as far away as possible from them, while at the same time you're still being targeted by more shots. What I found works best is moving along at the edge, because then a lot of the shots aren't even going to have a chance to be targeted at you because they'll be eaten by the wall, and you'll have to focus on dodging a minimal amount of shots. One thing you always want to be aware of is the pattern in which the purple fires spread. You can see north and south of where the shots land are always clear. Alternatively, standing slightly diagonally above or below where the shot lands also will work for you. After finishing this move, the Heretic will launch itself towards Isaac, creating 8 lines of purple flames in all cardinal and ordinal directions. After that, he has to spend a very short amount of time fixing his dislocated jaw before continuing his attacks. One last thing to note, upon death, Heretic's fiery eye falls to the ground and shoots 4 lines of purple flames in all cardinal directions. One last thing to note, like the Haunt, Heretic can be killed by Vade Retro if at 50% or less HP. The Visage, yes, that's how you pronounce that, are a heart and a mask bound together in phase 1 by a chain. During this phase, these guys have only one attack. The mask is going to be constantly chasing Isaac, trying to get close to him. Every once in a while, the mask is also going to be charging towards Isaac, and as it collides with the wall, there's going to be a spray of rocks flying outwards. The heart then pulls the mask back in. Usually the chain is a fixed length as well, but for these charging moves, it will extend. Note that the mask will start to rapidly move towards Isaac if it hasn't charged in a while, pulling the heart with it. After breaking the chain, the boss behaves similarly to the Mask of Infamy, with the heart and the masks moving around separately from one another. The heart will now actively avoid Isaac, while the mask is trying to actively hunt Isaac. The mask will also speed up if it sees Isaac in any of the cardinal directions, but it can also be deactivated after taking 100 damage. In this phase, the heart will continuously fire a chain to pull in the mask and perform some combo attack with it. That combo attack will be different depending on whether the mask is activated or not. First, the heart can pull in the mask and fire a horizontal helix of 2 brimstone lasers that also pushes the heart towards the wall. Now, the wiki says that there's a version of this attack where the lasers don't happen if the mask is turned off. I could never get him to do that while recording this, so I'm assuming the only way for this to happen is if you deactivate the mask as the heart is performing the attack. The heart can launch a chain at the mask and reel it in a spiral pattern while the mask fires a bunch of projectiles outwards. If the mask collides with a wall, there will be rocks flying outwards as well. At the end of this move, the heart is going to pull the mask all the way towards it. If the mask is turned off for this move, then it won't be firing projectiles. It can pull the mask in with a chain, then perform a jump attack towards Isaac. Upon landing, it will shoot out a burst of rocks, as well as 4 rock waves in all the diagonal directions. This move is no different if the mask turns out to be turned off. Lastly, the heart can fire a chain directly at Isaac. If the chain connects with Isaac, it pulls him into the heart and he will take contact damage from touching the heart. If the chain misses Isaac, it will extend all the way into the wall, pulling the heart into the wall and shooting a burst of rocks as the heart collides with the wall. This attack in particular can only be used if the mask is deactivated, so this chain move is something you only need to look out for if the mask is currently turned off. Once the heart drops below 50% of its HP, the outer shell breaks and it starts glowing. Its movement becomes a bit more erratic, and these red fireballs are added to its attacks. The fireballs are called Visage Plasmas. They have 50 HP and can be destroyed by Isaac. If the mask is deactivated, the Visage Plasmas are always automatically going to move towards the mask and reactivate it upon colliding with it. Every time the mask touches a plasma, it will also fire a brimstone laser and get hurled towards a wall. Depending on which direction the plasma is hit from, it will always fire in the direction that the plasma entered it from. The heart can also stop moving for a short amount of time and then fire out 16 red projectiles. And lastly, this phase has one more attack, which is so absurd to trigger that I didn't even know this existed before I started working on this boss guide. If there are 3 Visage Plasmas on the field at the same time, and you'll see from this footage that it's going to take me forever to do this because the mask keeps sucking them up as well. But if you manage to get 4 Plasmas onto the field at the same time, the heart does this attack where it sucks them all up to power up and then fire a massive wave of fires, filling the entire room. The only way to avoid this move is to hide behind the mask, which will always deactivate for this move and act as a shield. Like said, this move is so absurdly rare that I didn't even know this existed before I started working on this, and if you see this move, then you're probably gonna get grilled by this boss anyway, as it's super difficult to deal with on low-ish damage. So yeah, you really shouldn't be seeing this one realistically, but I thought it was interesting that he had it, considering it was such a ridiculous condition to actually get to see this move. As for fighting this boss, keeping your distance from the heart really is your best friend, as most of the attacks come out of the heart or really emerge from really close to the heart. You want to stay as far away as possible. This gives you more time to react to the bursts of projectiles that fly at you. The rocks are really realistically never going to reach you if you stay far away from the heart, so keep your distance. Range is your big friend here. I would personally not recommend wasting your time with trying to deactivate the face. Just go for the heart, try to deal as much damage to it as possible, as quickly as possible, and kind of just try to ignore the face. It is a giant nuisance, but especially in phase 3, it will just come back to life over and over again with how many plasmas the heart shoots, so it's really impractical to try and whittle that down, especially if you don't have any form of piercing or any way to reliably hit it from behind. This is a really tough boss. There's lots going on at the same time and lots of stuff to dodge and take care of at the same time. So honestly, there's not a whole lot of shame in getting hit by this guy a lot. It's tough. And yeah, all I can say is just keep your distance and try and give yourself as much room and as much time as possible to dodge its attacks. The Horny Boys are basically just two Lokis conjoined together, and they will also act like two Lokis in a lot of regards. First off, they can summon a Boomfly that is circled by 3 pink Eternal Fly bombs shielding it. They will start juggling bombs and then throw him one by one at Isaac. Every single one of these bombs has a chance to be a hot bomb, which will deal contact damage, or a sad bomb, which will burst into a bunch of tears. They have a teleporting move, which has 2 different variations. For once, they can teleport 5 times, throwing sad bombs at their feet and then porting. Or alternatively, they can teleport up to 3 times. With every teleport, they will toss out a brimstone bomb at Isaac, which fires lasers in all the cardinal directions. And lastly, they can chain together numerous consecutive tear patterns while gradually increasing the tear rate in which they are fired. It starts off with 4 cardinal projectiles, followed by 4 diagonal projectiles, then it's 4 cardinals again, 8 projectiles in all those directions, 12 projectiles in all directions, 8 clusters in all directions, each containing 3 projectiles, 10 projectiles in all directions rotating counterclockwise, 10 projectiles in all directions rotating clockwise, 4 diagonal projectiles, 4 cardinal spreads, each containing 3 projectiles, 4 diagonal spreads, each containing 3 projectiles, 8 projectiles in all directions, 4 diagonal spreads, each containing 5 projectiles, 10 projectiles in all directions, 8 projectiles in all directions, 12 projectiles in all directions, 12 projectiles in all directions again, 4 cardinal projectiles, 4 diagonal projectiles, and the attack ends with Hornfell getting sick and vomiting out 3 fireballs that each extend in cardinal directions upon landing. As for fighting these guys, they're really not the most complex boss. As always, when they summon the flies, you want to take them out immediately to crowd control. When they do the big tier attack, you want to really just stay as far away as possible, and you shouldn't have any trouble because you'll get a lot of time to react to these fairly simplistic tier patterns when you're far away from them. The bomb juggle and toss move can be a bit tricky because if you're close to them, you're probably gonna just get 3 bombs thrown in your face. It'll be impossible to dodge, but you can usually alleviate that by just once again staying far away from them. For the teleporting move, they don't really seem to get close to you when they do the teleports, so you should also have plenty of time to dodge those. Especially the sad bombs, you know, there's going to be a huge spread as long as you stay far away. And the brim bombs take quite a while to explode and have a fairly small AoE. One last thing to note is that this boss has a special interaction with the meat cleaver, where if you use it against them, they're going to get separated and you're going to be left with a Hornfell that's just running around with his cart and a regular old Loki fight. I consider this to be much easier than fighting Hornfell, even though Hornfell isn't exactly a tough boss either. So if you have the chance to do this, by all means, go do it. It makes it quite a bit easier. Chimera can shoot out 8 Ipecac shots at Isaac, predicting where he's going to move. The landing spots of those Ipecac shots are going to be marked on the floor. It can also walk towards Isaac and spit out 5 maggots towards him. It can spit out a sick Boomfly and throw it towards Isaac. And lastly, it can jump towards Isaac twice. On the first landing, it shoots out a burst of 8 tears in all cardinal northern directions. On the second landing, it shoots out 4 rock waves in all ordinal directions. In between attacks, Chimera will be trotting towards Isaac, building up speed. When it gets fast enough, it will start leaving behind a trail of green creep. Chimera speed will reset after every attack it does, except for the 5 maggot move. After dropping to a little more than half HP, Chimera will start one final charge at Isaac, leaving behind a trail of green creep. As it approaches 50%, it's gonna slowly build damage resistance before finally tumbling and separating the head from the body. From there on out, the head will continuously be leaping towards Isaac while leaving a trail of red damaging creep. It can also perform a few different attacks. It can shoot out 4 spreads of 5 projectiles each in Isaac's direction. It can perform 3 dashes in quick succession after one another, similarly to how Dingle does it. The first 2 dashes are going to be aiming for Isaac, while the third dash aims at the body. After the third dash, the body can pick up the head and throw it at Isaac while leading its shot, and the head will also shoot out a trail of projectiles as it's being tossed around. If the body is killed before the head will then continue to charge at Isaac over and over again while leaving a trail of red creep, similarly to how Dingle does it, except without the pauses. The body will be moving separately from the head in this phase. If Isaac is lined up with it, above it, or below it,
the body will be firing a green brimstone downwards, which will also propel the body upwards, so no matter if you're above or below, this attack will be aiming for you in some capacity. The body can also start chasing Isaac, which is indicated by a distinct running animation. While it chases Isaac, it builds up speed until it finally starts rolling diagonally through the room, similarly to how the cage does, bouncing off of walls in the process. If the head ends up dying before the body will just continue this rolling attack that I just described. So if you kill the head first, the body will just end up rolling diagonally through the room until the fight is done. As for fighting this guy, this is actually a fairly tough boss. Phase 1 is not so bad, where it's another one of those bosses where if you keep running clockwise, you should be fine. As with every boss that summons mobs, you just want to crowd control them as fast as possible. Other than that, like I said, keep running in a circle and it should be fine, because all he does is run after you for most of the fight. Sometimes you might have to switch directions like I did there, but again, for the most part, stay in motion. It's a boss that runs after you, so standing still is deadly. But other than that, not that big of a deal. Phase 2, on the other hand, is actually pretty tough. What I would recommend you is to continuously run underneath or above the body to get it to do the brimstone attack. That one is much easier to dodge than the rolling one, especially with the head on and about. You really don't want the body be rolling around there and the head firing at you at the same time. As for the head, you do want to usually stay pretty far away because of the spread shot attack. And one thing that you should always keep in mind for this boss is absolutely try and kill the head first. The head is a much tougher third phase compared to the body. If you're left over with only the head, it's going to be fairly likely to get hit again, because he limits your movement quite a bit in this last phase, whereas the body just rolls around and is very easy to predict in its movement. Rot Gut is a 3-phase boss. Against its phase, it will vomit out projectiles into the air, as well as globins, gazing globins, and small maggots. It can also fire out 3 waves of projectiles in a row. The first one will be a radial of tight-knit, slow-moving green tears. The second one will be a radial of spaced out and fast-moving red tears. And the last one will be a burst of random tears that hover in the air for a moment before dropping to the ground. He does this little charge, after which he spews out a constant wave of projectiles that alternates above and below him. However, there is enough space to dodge in between them. After the charge, he can also spew out waves of fluctuating spaced out projectiles in its organized pattern. Once again, if you stay far enough away from that, there should be enough space between the tiers to dodge them. He can fire rings of 8 projectiles each that move outwards and alternate between rotating clockwise and counterclockwise. Once again, keeping your distance is advised here. There's plenty of room between those tiers and you should be able to just walk in between them. And lastly, there's one more attack for him mentioned on the Isaac wiki that reads coughs up a horizontal burst of red projectiles to the left and right side of itself. Now, I was waiting on this boss for quite a while and I could not get him to do this move. Honestly, I don't really have any memory of him ever doing this to me, so I don't know if this is real or if the wiki is incorrect about that. Unfortunately, I don't have any footage on it, but if it's really a burst of red tears flying to the left and right, you should be able to easily dodge that by just staying below or above him. After beating phase 1, Rot Gut sucks in Isaac and sends him into a crawl space-like interior where phase 2 is being fought. In this crawl space room, in the bottom right, there's a maggot, which is apparently named Gus. This guy performs attacks against Isaac depending on his position in the room. If Isaac's on the top platform, Gus will shoot a cluster of green projectiles at him at the top and also cover the top projectiles in green poisonous gas. He can also shoot out 6 slow traveling tears that will travel across the room in a wave pattern. And lastly, while Isaac is at the top, he has a chance of firing out an Ipecac shot that bursts into arcing tears. At the bottom, he can fire a brimstone laser that actually lasts long enough to hit Isaac twice if you were to not move out of the hitbox. And alternatively, he can also spit out a stream of blood projectiles that will also sometimes include flies. Once Gus the Maggot is defeated, he reveals a pathway to the third room. Moving into the third room, we'll start Rot Gut's third phase, where you fight his heart. The heart randomly switches between 2 different modes, which occur over the course of the fight. Mode 1, he shoots out a half ring of green projectiles with every beat of the heart, whereas in Mode 2, it drops 3 yellow projectiles off of the ceiling in random directions with every beat of the heart. Upon hitting the floor, those projectiles will split into 2 more arcing projectiles. So the heart will switch between those 2 modes while also performing one of 2 attacks at the same time. It can drop a large blood projectile onto the ground. Those burst into smaller blood projectiles that bounce all over the room. It can do this up to 2 times back to back. Or it can retreat upwards and start spawning leeches that move from one side of the room to the other, then despawning when they reach the end of the room. Please note that those leeches do not always spawn furthest away from Isaac, so when it retreats upwards, you really want to be in the middle of the room to see which side the leeches are coming from. Now, as for fighting tips with this guy, I'm honestly at a bit of a loss here. I've tried standing everywhere with this guy, but there's no true safe spots in this room. It's always all random. Like, every Rotgut phase 3 is going to be different, and there's tears flying all over the place. You can use the ladders to try and dodge this guy as much as you can, but like, you just gotta be vigilant. You can't really be far away from him because the furthest spots in the bottom left and bottom right corner are spots where you're typically not going to be able to hit the heart. If you stand on the ladder and try to dodge, you're very often just going to get cheap shot by tears that will bounce off of the ceiling. The only tip I can give you for this heart is to deal as much damage as possible to it as quickly as possible. Like, you can see I have huge difficulties here to try and dodge everything. You can't stand below him because if he drops the red tier, you're going to be screwed. You can't stay on the ladders because if it retreats upwards and the leeches come in from the side you're on, you're also going to be screwed. You can't stay at the top because tears are going to be bouncing off of the top and bounce into, and then you're screwed. Like, as you see, phase 3, if you have low damage, you're just screwed. Stay below him because I feel like that's mostly the safest spot you'll have and the ones where you will be able to dodge. Because if you're on a ladder and a tier comes from above, then there's just nothing you can do. But you can always dodge to the left or the right. So burst down this guy, deal as much damage to him as you can as quickly as possible, and just try and get through as fast as possible. Because you will take damage in this phase. You're not going to be able to prevent it, so just try to get to the end. The Scourge is probably my favorite boss in the entire game, both design-wise as well as from its attack patterns. But this guy is going to give you a run for your money. He'll float around and try and get above Isaac, and then can randomly perform the following attacks. He can shoot out a large cluster of tears towards Isaac, which also slowly homes in his direction. Upon hitting the wall, it will leave a puddle of green damaging creep as well as a few small maggots, and it will burst into a bunch of tears as well. If Scourge is at or below half HP, he will instead fire 3 smaller projectiles which have the exact same properties except they burst into fewer tears upon impact. He can launch 2 tendrils, one directly at Isaac, one away from him, digging them both into the wall and starting to rotate them around the room, all the while also repeatedly firing 12 projectiles outwards. He can shoot a single tendril at the wall and then have it follow Isaac, all the while pulling projectiles and maggots out of the wall. He can launch 2 tendrils to the left and right of Isaac, trapping him in a triangle-shaped arena. If Isaac gets trapped, he will then either fire walls of projectiles from his body with a single fast shot directly at Isaac, following up every single wave, or he can fire random yellow projectiles from the tendrils at Isaac. If you damage these tendrils, he will take minimal damage, and if you manage to destroy one during this attack, it will cancel it. If Isaac somehow gets caught outside of this triangle, the attack will immediately cancel. This also applies if you manage to leave the triangle somehow by virtue of stitches, for example. And lastly, the Scourge can move to the center of the room and begin sucking in 2 tight streams of projectiles towards you in a spiral pattern. The spiral pattern can change directions randomly during the attack, and as if this wasn't enough, there will also be random tears flying towards the Scourge from the outside as well. You guys, this is probably one of the coolest and hardest bosses in the game at the same time. For the triangle attack, you probably want to stay as far away from the body and the tendrils as you can. Attacking the tendrils didn't really seem very effective to me. Because all the other tendril attacks tend to aim at Isaac directly, I would advise staying in motion at all times and trying to move around him in kind of a half circle. The spiral attack is probably his hardest one. You got to keep a close eye on the tears to see when it switches directions, and even then it's very easy to get cheap shot by one of the random tears. And lastly, that big projectile shot is pretty easily solved by keep running in half circles, because that means the tear will probably hit the wall far away from you, which gives you plenty of time to react to these split shots. A lot of this boss really comes down to practice, and this is the kind of guy you just do not want to see when you're on a mediocre build with low HP. Alright, we're getting to the end bosses. Mom has a unique boss room with 4 doors on every side. She always starts the fight by stomping the center of the room, and then she starts picking from a random pool of attacks. She can stick her flesh out of the doors and spawn random enemies.
She can also briefly stick her eye out, which doesn't do anything except for contact damage, as you can see at the bottom of the room. She can also stomp Isaac's position, which is telegraphed by a shadow appearing underneath Isaac, as well as Mom going Isaac in one of multiple different voice lines. And lastly, if Isaac ever gets too close to an unused door, she can stick her hand out and slap Isaac for contact damage. With Mom being the first final boss you face in the game, it's no surprise that she's a bit of a roadblock for first-time players, but she's really not that difficult of a boss to fight. At the start of the fight, obviously, all you want to do is stay out of the center of the room, because that's where she stomps at the start. Other than that, it's important to stay kind of centered. Like, you never really want to be close to the doors because of that hand slam, as well as her having the possibility of just spawning enemies right on top of you. The only other thing you need to keep in mind is the fact that you want to stay in motion and you want to listen closely. The stomp attack is telegraphed, but it can catch you off guard if you're not paying attention or if you're really slow. So make sure to keep an eye on the shadow beneath you and just listen to her, because if you hear her screaming your name, or Isaac's name rather, then you know there's a stomp coming. Mom's Heart has two champion versions, the first one being Red Mom, which is recognizable because the foot has a red tint. Red Mom, as you can see, just stomps faster and a higher frequency. Every once in a while, she's going to pause the stomps to do either one of two things, which is either stick her hand out to smack Isaac if he's close enough to a door, or fire 3 bloodshots from an eye. The bloodshot does not have a tell, and it comes unannounced, so if you happen to be walking towards the door that fires the bloodshot, there's a good chance you're going to get hit. However, this is pretty rare and pretty unlucky at the same time, but it can happen, so just be aware that you want to try and stay as far away from those doors as possible, but sometimes it won't help you. Blue Mom is very similar to OG Mom, except she has 23% more HP, and she summons a different set of enemies. These champions in particular are from the Wrath of the Lamb DLC, which is at this point almost 10 years old, I think, and the enemies that she summons here are all added from the first ever DLC that Isaac got. Now that one's ancient, so it's hard to name them all at this point, but just keep in mind it's a different set of enemies. It's generally more annoying. This is the Mom version you don't want to see if you're lacking crowd control or some very decent single target damage. But obviously it sometimes is going to happen, so you're just going to have to go through all these tankier enemies as well as a tankier Mom. There's one more thing to say about Mom, and this is a very classic interaction from even OG Isaac, which is that using the Bible in the Mom fight will immediately kill her. Lastly, there's also Mausoleum Mom, which is basically the same boss fight, just a bit harder, but it still gets its own chapter in this video. Mausoleum Mom is quite a bit more difficult, having 2 powered up versions of her attacks. When she sticks an eyeball out, she will follow that up by shooting 2 lasers in a helix pattern across the room. When she tries to stomp Isaac, she will always do 3 stomps in succession, with the last one sending explosions in all cardinal directions. One important thing to note about these 2 attacks is they can never happen simultaneously, so if she's in the middle of firing brimstone lasers and she ends up stomping, she will only do a single stomp. And if she ends up sticking out an eyeball while she's in the triple stomp, she will not be firing a brimstone at you. She can, however, fire multiple brimstones across the room at the same time. She also summons a different set of enemies, most of which are from the Repentance DLC. And like regular Mom, she just gets one-shot by the Bible. Okay, so before we get into the It Lives fight, one quick note. There are 2 versions to this fight called Mom's Heart and It Lives. The latter is unlocked after beating Mom's Heart 11 times. It Lives is just a slightly stronger version of Mom's Heart, which you will be fighting for the majority of the game if you're playing Isaac for a long time. So in this video, I'm just going to cover the It Lives fight, but the Mom's Heart fight is very, very similar to this one. It Lives starts off with 2 eyes to the left and right. After a few seconds, it retreats upwards and lets you fight the eyes. After you destroy the first 2, there's 2 more spawning one after another, as It Lives bombards you from above with waves of 4 tears. After those have been defeated, Mom's Heart alternates between 2 attacks. First, she's going to lower herself to the center of the room again and choose from one of 4 different tier attacks. She can either fire 8 slightly curved lines of projectiles that rotate and expand outwards slowly. She can do 10 projectiles that either move outwards continuously or in a pulsating pattern like here, and she can fire 2 streams of projectiles that spiral outwards. After a certain amount of time in any of those 4 attacks have passed, she will spawn a set of enemies pulled from a certain pool that also includes boss enemies. You'll normally fight those enemies while she fires bursts of 4 tears at you repeatedly, and once those enemies are defeated, she will come back down and once again perform one of the 4 aforementioned attacks. She'll repeat this pattern of hiding at the top and then coming back down to do stuff until she's at 60% of her max HP, at which point she enters phase 2. Phase 2 is indicated by the heart itself beating faster, as well as her gaining 3 more projectile attacks. She can either do 3 pulsating curved lines of projectiles that rotate outwards. Note that this pattern can and will occasionally change directions. She can fire 5 lines of projectiles that do slightly adjust their direction every time Isaac moves, but will remain in the same pattern as long as Isaac stands still. And lastly, she can fire a single line of projectiles directly at Isaac that will also follow him around. Once again, in phase 2, she will always alternate between doing an attack on the ground and then retreating back up after having summoned a bunch of enemies for Isaac to fight. After you defeat all these enemies, she comes back down and pulls from this pool of attacks. Phase 3 starts when Mom's Heart reaches 30% of her max HP. In this phase, she will not retreat back upwards to hide from Isaac, but instead she will do tier patterns and enemy spawns at the same time. However, she won't start any new tier patterns while there's still enemies alive. However, after summoning enemies, she will and can start doing tier patterns at you. She retains all the tier patterns from the previous 2 phases, and she gains 1 new one. Unfortunately, I couldn't manage to get any recordings of that attack, but the wiki describes it as 4 curved lines of projectiles that continuously rotate and expand outwards. Phase 4 starts when Mom's Heart reaches below 20% of her max HP. In this last phase, she'll pulsate very fast and just fire 4 brimstones in 4 directions that will rotate around the room. The duration of this attack is random, and she'll either rotate around 1 time, 1.5 times, or 2 full times. And as you can see, she will be repeating this attack over and over again until she ultimately is dead. Upon death, Mom's Heart will fire out a ring of 14 projectiles in all directions. As for fighting tips for Mom's Heart, the 4 corners of this room are really your best friend. It's the furthest you can ever be from Mom's Heart, and distance is the name of the game here. The further you are, the more the tiers will spread out, so there will be more space for you to go in between them. If you're on tiers, as long as you don't go in with lower than 5 range, you should be able to just hit her from the side as well. So you can just hang out in the center of the room for as long as it's safe and just chuck away at her. This is not a particularly hard boss fight, but it gets very bullet helly, so it's a lot about memorizing the patterns and what they do and how you get to avoid them. Once again, distance is your friend, because the further you're away, the more holes you are going to have to sneak through. And other than that, you want to damage burst Mom's Heart as much as you can, because it is easy to get caught in a bad spot, especially when there's tier patterns and enemies on the field at the same time. The rotating brimstone can be a bit tricky at the end, because sometimes she tends to stop out of nowhere and you kind of just run into the brimstone because you keep going. At the same time, if you know that she either does 1, 1.5, or 2 rotations, you should be fine with this. You want to try and stay as far away from the starting brimstones as you can, because the closer you are to them, the more likely they are to rotate towards you. Their rotating direction actually depends on which brimstone is closest to you, so if you pay close attention as they spawn, you should also be able to accurately predict which direction they're going to rotate in. Other than that, this is really not that difficult of a boss fight. Keep your distance when she's firing tears at you and try to kill the incoming mobs as fast as possible, and you're going to be okay. If you destroy the flesh door in Gehenna after defeating Mom, you're also going to be faced with a more difficult version of Mom's Heart. This one starts out just like basic Mom's Heart / It Lives, with 2 eyeballs while it retreats upwards. However, after defeating those 2 eyeballs, there won't be any follow-up eyeballs, and she'll also stay low for the entire rest of the fight. This fight also has 4 different phases. During these phases, it will bombard you with different tier patterns. During phase 1, it has access to 3 different ones. She can fire out rings of 8 projectiles that expand outwards and alternate between rotating clockwise or counterclockwise. She can fire 2 streams of projectiles that spiral outwards and gradually increase in density. And lastly, she can fire waves of 2 rings consisting of 8 projectiles each that move outwards in a pulsating pattern. This version of Mom's Heart also reaches phase 2 below 60% HP, which is indicated by the faster pulsating. In this phase, she loses all previous patterns and gains 4 new ones. She can fire out rings of 16 projectiles each. 8 of which will move in all cardinal and ordinal directions continuously, while the other 8 rotate clockwise and counterclockwise while moving outside. She can fire 16 wavy streams of projectiles that intertwine and create gaps like this. She can fire 5 waving lines of projectiles that rotate and expand outwards, where Isaac has to rotate along with them. She can fire 16 streams of projectiles that curve around the room and come back to her, creating gaps in between. At 30% HP, Mom's Heart enters phase 3, which is once again indicated by faster pulsating. In this phase, she keeps all attacks from phase 2. She also regains the spiral pattern and the ring pattern from phase 1. And furthermore, she gains 2 more attack patterns for phase 3. She can do 6 lines of projectiles that rotate in opposite directions, 3 clockwise, 3 counterclockwise. Okay, and apparently there's a second pattern that the wiki describes as a ring of 12 projectiles that expands outwards, along with 2 rings of 4 projectiles that expand outwards and rotate in opposite directions at a higher speed. Now, I tried to get this one for over 4 minutes and I couldn't get to do it. I don't know if it exists, but at some point here, I had just decided that it doesn't exist. This is me pausing to check if it actually exists or not. So yeah, I couldn't find it. If anyone has footage for it, feel free to post in the comments and I'll pin your comment, but I could not get this pattern to work. After falling to 10% of its max HP, Mom's Heart reaches phase 4, at which it shoots a brimstone laser up and down at the start, which rotate at a continuous pattern around the room. Simultaneously, she fires 2 streams of tears, one directly at Isaac, the other one in the exact opposite direction of him. She will continue to do this until she is eventually defeated. Like It Lives or Mom's Heart in the Womb, this version of Mom's Heart will also fire 14 tears upon death, so make sure to stand in a corner to be able to dodge that at the end. As for fighting tips, a lot of the same things that applied to Mom's Heart and It Lives in Womb apply here. There's actually a blind spot for the intertwining attacks, which is right here. This position that I'm in right now is actually a safe spot for both of the intertwining attacks. As for the other ones, once again, keep your distance to increase the spread of tears. You want to keep a close eye, especially on the ring attack that has rotating tears and non-rotating tears, because you're going to have to find a way to slip through the gaps. Once again, the gaps are going to be bigger the further you're going to be away from Mom's Heart, so that's going to make dodging a lot easier. Unlike It Lives on the Womb, this one also doesn't go invincible for like half the fight when you're dealing with a low damage build, so this one can be pretty much continuously hit. So just get that damage in. There's no mobs for you to clear. Overall, I would say once you get this down, it's actually easier than the version in the Womb, even though it's very overwhelming at first. But yeah, know your safe spots like the one I'm standing in right now, and otherwise just keep your distance and try to slide between the gaps while applying constant damage. Now, there is one last thing to know about these bosses, which is exactly like Mom, both versions of Mom's Heart / It Lives can be killed by a quick tap of the Bible. Isaac is a 3-phase boss that only starts hitting back after you hit him for the first time. In phase 1, he remains stationary on the ground and can do one of 4 things. He can shoot out 10 lines of long-range spinning projectiles, along with 10 slightly curved lines of shorter-range projectiles in every direction. He can shoot out a chaotic pattern of tears, which towards the end have large gaps in between. He can fire 10 lines of projectiles in every direction. And lastly, he can shoot out 8 groups of projectiles that curve back towards him. After losing about a quarter of his HP, Isaac moves into phase 2, where he stands up. In this phase, he will periodically summon 2 angelic babies that start attacking you. He will also periodically summon 2 Crack the Sky beams in random locations that are announced by a white shimmer on the ground. Note that while the locations are random, they do generally try to aim for Isaac most of the time, so be aware of that and look out for the white light beams. During this phase, Isaac can also fire 8 tears in random directions. And lastly, he can fire 4 tears in a cross pattern in random directions, which will then burst apart like cricket's headshots. One more thing to note about phase 1 and 2 is that during all of these attacks, Isaac will at the same time be firing tears at the player constantly. In phase 3, Isaac starts off with growing a bunch of angelic wings and going off screen, summoning a bunch of light beams from the sky. These light beams move from one corner to the other of the room, and the player has to try and sneak through them to avoid them. Note that in previous DLCs before Repentance came out, you were actually able to stand in one of the adjacent corners from where the beam started and you would 100% be safe. That does not work anymore in Repentance. It's not consistent. It works most of the time, but it can fail, and it is definitely not consistent. The light beams are indicated by shadows on the ground, and as long as you stand close to any light beam, you're going to be safe from the rest. After coming back down into the room, Isaac performs the 10 lines of Tears attack that he has in phase 1, and he will repeat this exact pattern every time he takes 200 points of damage. If, however, you don't deal 200 points of damage to Isaac in time, he will start chasing the player down while also firing Tears at him constantly. During this, he will periodically move any of the moves that he also had in phase 1. So the typical Isaac fight usually involves doing 200 damage while he does his tier attack after coming down, and then a weaker build would also have to deal with this chase attack. As for the strategy to this fight, in phase 1 and 2 you really want to try and stay far away from him, because the further you are away, the bigger there's going to be the gaps in between the attacks. Staying far back also gives you the ability to move into a corner of the room when he does the spiral attack, which is the best way to dodge that one. In phase 2, as with every other boss, you want to kill the ads as quickly as possible to remove the pressure from you. You'll also mostly want to keep your eyes on your own character so you can react to the light beams in time. Other than that, you need to keep an eye on whether he's firing 8 tiers or 4 tiers at once. And when it's 4 tiers, you need to try and stay away from them as they burst open so you have more time to react to the split. Phase 3 is really the easiest of the 3 phases if you have a somewhat decent amount of damage, because you can pretty much freeze him in this pattern of flying up, summoning light beams, and then coming back down, shooting a bunch of tiers, and then going back up immediately. If you don't have that kind of damage, you gotta kind of bob and weave up and down as he is chasing you, because his movement is dependent on your own, and this way you're gonna prevent him from moving towards you too quickly. One more thing, there seems to be a common misconception that using the Bible on Isaac kills you, similarly to the way it kills you if you use it against Satan. However, that is not true. You can use the Bible in this fight. Gaining flight here doesn't really have any practical use, but if you so desire, you can use it. Blue Baby is basically Isaac reloaded. Much like Isaac, he only starts attacking you after you start attacking him, and then he performs a lot of attacks in 3 phases that are very similar to Isaac's. Main difference is that every tier this guy fires has a chance of being a homing tier instead, so you gotta make sure you keep an eye on that and also always keep moving. In phase 1, he can fire between 6 and 8 lines of projectiles, either in a straight or curved pattern. Every once in a while, he'll also be summoning a bunch of flies around him to protect him. And lastly, he can shoot 8 lines of 2 projectiles each in either a straight or in a curved pattern. Much like Isaac, after losing about a quarter of his health, he stands up and moves into phase 2. In phase 2, Blue Baby gains 2 eternal flies that circle and protect him. He'll also keep summoning pooters and attack flies for additional defense. Furthermore, he has 2 new attacks. The first of which is him shooting out 4 tiers in a cross pattern across the room. These are all homing tiers. And then him also shooting 8 tiers in all cardinal and ordinal direction. All of these are homing tiers too. For the entirety of phase 2, Blue Baby will be alternating between those 2 attacks. After dropping down to about half, Blue Baby moves into phase 3, where much like Isaac, he will grow a pair of wings. Unlike Isaac, he doesn't go off screen. Instead, he starts drifting towards Isaac, chasing down the player while shooting tiers at him. In phase 3, he also regains both of the attack patterns that he had in phase 1. Furthermore, every once in a while he will teleport off screen and then reappear in a position near Isaac. In earlier versions of the game, on release, he used to teleport right in front of you and it was pretty much impossible to dodge him. Now he teleports in at a reasonable distance to the point where it's easy to react to and he doesn't just telefrag you. As for fighting this guy, a lot of the same tips apply that apply to Isaac, as it's essentially a carbon copy of the boss with a few extras. Just keep your distance and you'll be able to react easily. A lot of his attacks have huge gaps in between, so it really shouldn't be a problem for you to dodge this guy constantly. Much like with Isaac, some people seem to think that using the Bible in here immediately kills you. That is not true. It is free to use. Once again, there's no creep or other grounded hazards in this fight, so it doesn't really give you any benefits, but if you want to have the flight, you can. Satan is the boss that waits at the end of Sheol. 4 seconds after entering the room, Fallen spawns together with 2 kamikaze leeches. If you just place a bomb about 3 seconds after entering the room, it's going to perfectly blow everything up and immediately move Fallen to phase 2. Other than that, this is just a normal Fallen fight, so nothing to talk about here. After Fallen is defeated, he moves into phase 2, where the statue
in the middle of the room comes to life. From there, his attacks depend on whether Isaac is to the left, right, or below Satan. As long as Isaac is to the left or the right, he can either fire 2 consecutive spreads of 5 and then 4 projectiles towards Isaac. He also always chains his attack together at least twice. Or he can fire out 8 projectiles from his hands in both directions in a half-ring pattern. If Isaac is below him, he can either fire a single brimstone downwards from his mouth, which is also indicated by him doing a long inhale beforehand, or he can fire 2 brimstones from his hand that curve towards the corners and then move towards the middle, but always leaving a gap in between. This attack is telegraphed by him keeping his mouth closed and his hands pointed towards him before he starts firing the lasers. Once his entire health bar is depleted, he moves into phase 3, where he flies off screen and starts stomping Isaac, similarly to how Mom's foot does it, except this one is constant. There's always 2 feet coming down one after another and then staying on screen for a bit before going back up and trying to stomp in Isaac's position again. Furthermore, he will also constantly summon kamikaze leeches for a limit of up to 2 on the screen. If you can get one of those to detonate near a foot or to stomp the leech itself, they will take massive amounts of damage, so it is advised to try and do that if you can. As for fighting this guy, I would recommend constantly staying to his left and right. I didn't do it in this footage, of course, because I was trying to show up all of his attacks, but if you stay far away from him and stay to the left and right and have him only do tier attacks, it is very easy to dodge them as they leave quite the wide gaps towards the end of the room. As you can see here, the brimstone attacks are also not entirely consistent. Sometimes he just won't do them when you're below him and it's kind of hard to predict them, so standing to the left and right, he will just consistently be firing tiers at you, and that's going to make it much easier for you. As for the foot stomps, you want to try and have him stomp at the top of the room constantly. The reason for this is that the legs tend to cover large portions of the screen, which makes it then hard to see the leeches that might spawn behind them. So it just gives you more vision. Other than that, the only thing you really want to do in this phase is stay in motion, because then you pretty much never get stomped, and that way it should be easy for you to deal with this boss without getting hit. Upon Satan's death, all remaining kamikaze leeches die. One more thing, and this is where the rumors stem from Isaac and Blue Baby. If you use the Bible against Satan, you will die immediately. However, you can prevent this death with extra lives such as Dead Cat. For all you old school Flash players out there, I do know you watched this video. Please note that this works differently in Repentance than it did in Flash Isaac. In Flash Isaac, using the Bible dealt an infinite amount of damage to Isaac, and because soul hearts are coded to be able to take an infinite amount of damage if you only have half of them, you could actually survive the Bible kill in Flash Isaac if you had exactly half a soul heart. This does not work in Repentance, it's just gonna kill you. The Lamb is the final boss of the Darkroom route and has 2 phases. In phase 1, he slowly floats towards Isaac and performs one of 4 attacks. He can shoot out 6 rings of 10 projectiles each. During this attack, the Lamb will continue to float towards Isaac, and 1 tier will also always be directly aimed at Isaac. He can fire out 3 rotating waves of projectiles around themselves that will circle across the room and start homing in on Isaac if they get close. It can unleash a burst of small Ipecac projectiles in random directions. It can fire between 2 and 4 rotating lines of homing projectiles that also follow around with Isaac's movement. And lastly, he can fire 5 quickly rotating lines of projectiles. During any of Lamb's attacks, he also has a chance to summon a bunch of attack flies. After dropping below 50%, the head and the body detach from one another. The head will continue to float towards Isaac, and both of them will perform attacks independently from another. The head will also keep most of the attacks from phase 1. The only ones they lose is the ability to summon flies, as well as the ability to do the little Ipecac shots. In addition to that, the head can also spit a burst of monstrous lung homing tears towards Isaac. It can also stop in place and fire 4 brimstone beams in all cardinal and ordinal directions, and then rotate them either clockwise or counterclockwise. And lastly, it can fire out 6 waves of 3 tiers each in a rotating pattern. Those tiers, upon hitting the ground or any wall, will split into 4 tiers. Meanwhile, the body has exactly 1 attack, which it will perform at random intervals, but never while the head is attacking. The body can shoot out a burst of tears in all directions, while also summoning between 1 and 5 attack flies. If the head is defeated first, the body can then summon up to 25 attack flies at a time. It will also perform its attack much more often, but that is mostly due to the fact that the head can't be there attacking, which would stop the body from doing its thing. The head does not gain any additional behavior if the body is defeated first. After the body is defeated, there will also be a rather lengthy Curse of Darkness on the floor. As for fighting this boss, a lot of the same tips that apply to Isaac and Blue Baby also apply to this guy and to most other bosses for that matter. If you stay really far away from him, the spread between the tiers is going to be wider as they reach you, and they will be easier to dodge. Most of its attacks, especially the homing shots, do move rather slowly. One important thing to note is that it can be difficult to dodge the Brimstone attacks and the rotating tier attacks, in fact, if Delirium ends up being really close to a wall. So the way you want to move around him, you probably want to keep him rather in the center of the room or towards the center of the room rather than against a wall, because otherwise he can catch you in a bad spot and actually get into a position where you just cannot dodge his attacks. One more thing to note is that while I don't think it makes the fight particularly harder in my opinion, but you might want to consider not killing the body first, as that will trigger that Curse of Darkness probably for the entire rest of the fight. So if that is something you struggle with, you might want to just make sure you kill the head first. Okay, two more things before we're done with the lamp. First off, he also has one more move in phase 2 where he charges towards you at really high speed. You want to dodge that to the top or the bottom, but it can be really hard to react to. And second off, as with Isaac and Blue Baby, you don't actually die if you use the Bible here. I think it would thematically make more sense here than it would against Isaac and Blue Baby, but you don't. Mega Satan is the final boss behind the golden door in both the chest and the dark room. The fight starts when you first step on the pentagram in the center and Mega Satan spawns at the top alongside with his two hands. He'll then pause for a bit, randomly perform one of his attacks, then pause for a bit again, then perform one of his attacks, and so on. While he only has 2 phases, his first phase is divided into a bunch of cycles. Mega Satan having a total of 5000 HP. After taking 750 damage, he will go off screen and do a little in-between thing after coming back up. You do that for the first 4 times, aka after he's taken 3000 damage, he will then move into phase 2. Every hand has 600 total HP, and destroying a hand will automatically also deal 100 points of damage to the head. Mega Satan will close his eyes and then follow up with one of several projectile patterns. He can fire 3 lines of blood projectiles that alternate between slowly curving left and right and creating these oval-shaped holes in between. He can fire large half rings of blood projectiles in bursts of 3, which spread out really far at the bottom of the screen. He can fire 3 to 5 lines of blood projectiles that alternate between rotating clockwise or counterclockwise. He can fire 2 spirals of blood projectiles that rotate very rapidly, making it look like he's just firing slightly curving lines. He can shoot a spread of brown projectiles that travel slowly and then burst into 4 tiers once they hit the ground. If you stay close to him, you won't get hit by these at all. Alternatively, after closing his eyes, he can also fire a Mega Blast downwards. This is usually indicated by his hands drifting apart beforehand. He can slam his head into the platform between 1 and 3 times, creating a chaotic burst of projectiles in all directions. He can lift up his fist and then slams it into where Isaac is standing, creating a ring of rocks in the process. He can alternate slamming his hands into the ground left and right 3 times, creating a wave of rocks that moves downwards in the process. If it's far enough to either side of the room, you can dodge this attack to the side like I do here, but usually the standard way to dodge this is to move to the far bottom of the room and just bob and weave to the left and right to avoid these rocks. Now this may come as a surprise to you, but if you end up destroying both of Mega Satan's hands, he will not be able to use any attacks involving his hands for 30 seconds, which is how long each individual hand takes to respawn. And lastly, Mega Satan can spawn one of 4 different sets of mini-bosses. Those 4 sets are Wrath and Greed, Gluttony and Envy, Sloth and Pride, or Lust. After taking 750 points of damage, Mega Satan will retreat to safety and start spawning bosses. This is the end of the first of 4 cycles that I mentioned at the start of the segment. After retreating, he will then summon Famine and Pestilence, and after you beat those 2, he will also summon War and Death. And then after defeating those 2, he will come back above ground and continue as he did in cycle number 1. Also note that when he summons these, they will either be in their normal or champion forms, meaning that if the first 2 are champions, that means the rest of them will also be champions. After dealing another 750 damage to cycle number 2, he will then retreat again and one after another summon a wave that just consists of Super Envy. After that, a wave that consists of Super Lust and Super Wrath, and after that, a wave
that consists of Super Sloth, Super Gluttony, Super Pride, and Super Greed, which on a mediocre build I personally consider to be the hardest part of the Mega Satan fight. After defeating those 4, Mega Satan comes back for cycle number 3, which once again takes 750 damage for him to move into the last cycle. He goes back down, becomes invulnerable, and then one after another summons a fallen Uriel and a fallen Gabriel, which are factually no different at all from Uriel and Gabriel that you fought on the way here. After dealing another 750 damage to cycle 4 of Mega Satan, he will then sink into the darkness and rise in his final phase as a skull. In this phase, Mega Satan no longer has his hands, nor will he summon bosses. He retains all the Bloodshot patterns from phase number 1 and gains a few more complex ones in addition to those. He can fire many lines of projectiles that slowly curve to the left or right respectively, depending on whether they're black or red. These lines create safe spaces to maneuver through that slowly shift to the right. He can breathe 2 lines of fires which slowly curve to the left and then to the right. There's a space in between them that Isaac can wiggle through that is safe. He can fire several rings of projectiles that rotate clockwise and counterclockwise respectively, the red tiers rotating clockwise, the black ones counterclockwise, creating safe spaces in between. He can fire several lines of projectiles that converge into each other. This is one of the harder attacks to dodge, but there are gaps in between these that you need to find to be able to wiggle through. He can fire dense rings of black projectiles that slowly wiggle forward as they travel. If you stay really far to the bottom of the room, it's going to be really easy to dodge in between these large gaps. He can fire several lines of black projectiles that move downwards in like a half circle pattern, wiggling as they do. He can fire several lines of silver projectiles that wiggle similarly to Wiggle Worm. The angle at which they wiggle is randomized, so the safe space will either move to the left or the right. He has a second Wiggle Worm attack where he fires out half rings of silver tears that wiggle downwards at alternating speeds. He can fire alternating rings of black and red projectiles that wiggle forward and fluctuate in speed from ring to ring. He can fire several lines of projectiles making large zigzags as they move. There are spaces in between those, but this is a very visually stimulating attack, so it can be hard to actually see the gaps. He can fire a few lines of silver projectiles that wiggle around and leave large gaps in between. He can do the same move with a zigzag pattern instead of a wave pattern. He can fire alternating rings of red and black projectiles which slowly curve to the left or right respectively. Those leave large gaps in between that slowly move towards Mega Satan. He can fire a disorganized burst of red tears with large gaps in between. And lastly, he can fire several lines of silver tears that zigzag to the bottom of the room. You need to look out for gaps in between those as they zigzag and try to then wiggle through the middle. One more thing to note, if phase 2 of Mega Satan uses an attack from phase 1, usually the tears are replaced by these fires which have significantly larger hitboxes. This also leads to this particular attack to be a bit wonky, and a lot of the time I'm just going to get hit by it, and in practice I could not figure out how to wiggle through these gaps without getting hit. It's incredibly difficult to dodge, and this attack can just screw you over if it happens in a weird pattern. Ultra Greed and his second phase, Ultra Greedier, are the final bosses of Greed mode or Greedier mode respectively. He's fought in a unique 2x1 boss room with golden doors to the sides. At the start of the fight he hangs from the ceiling and can only be damaged after dropping down, and after that he will wander about and perform various attacks. He can spin his eyes around like a slot machine. Whatever the slot machine lands on determines on what he does. If it's 2 keys, he will spawn these key coins that burst open after a few seconds, and then open the golden doors at the side, revealing a bunch of enemies that run at Isaac. These guys have really low health, but they spawn in really big masses as you can see, so it's very hard to crowd control them. If he rolls 2 bombs, he summons a bunch of bomb coins, which will explode after a few seconds, if not destroyed in time. If he rolls 2 hearts, he summons a bunch of heart coins, which explode after a short amount of time and heal him for about 13 HP each. After receiving this, he will also get a speed buff for a short amount of time. And lastly, if the symbols don't match, he simply summons a bunch of faceless coins, which spin around and deal damage on contact. He can spin around the room, shooting coins in random directions. This attack also significantly increases his hitbox as of Repentance, so make sure to stay away from him while he does it. He can stomp the ground 4 times, spawning a keeper with each stomp. There's a maximum of 4 keepers alive at once. He can shoot coins at Isaac either in a monster-like pattern or in a spread of 3 to 5 coins at once. He can charge at Isaac whenever he's in line of sight. And at any point in time, if there's ever too many monsters or coins on the screen, Ultra Greed will perform a defensive stance where he takes significantly less damage, and he will maintain this stance until most of the enemies are defeated. As for fighting this guy, once again, the key is to stay fairly far away. The tear spreads and the Monstro's lung tears are really the ones that are going to catch you if you get too close. Same for the spin attack. With that increasing its hitbox, it can actually be deceptively dangerous. As for the coin attacks, I personally don't really mind the heart coins too much, so I usually don't take care of those. For the bomb coins, you kind of just want to clear out what's near you and then wait for them to explode. The key coins are usually a bit build dependent, because the more AoE you have, the easier they are to take out, but at the same time, the easier it is to take out all the spawns. If you're very much not AoE heavy, you probably want to try and take out as many coins as you can, because it's easy to get overrun by these guys, but for the most part, they have such low health that it's usually not a problem. The faceless coins are not hard to avoid while they're on the ground, but they do have a tendency to sometimes just drop on your head and there's nothing you can do. They're indicated by a shadow very shortly before they fall, but there's not a whole lot of time to react, so most of the time, if that thing wants to land on your head, it probably just will. Every time Ultra Greedier hits you, you will drop between 1 and 2 coins on the ground. Ultra Greedier, or Ultra Greed for that matter, will very aggressively run towards that coin and heal off of it if they pick it up. As the fight progresses, Ultra Greed will also get progressively more angry. The lower his health gets, the faster he will be performing his attacks, which is also indicated by him getting a slightly red tint. Once his health bar drops to 0, Ultra Greed turns into a golden statue. In regular Greed mode, that indicates the end of the fight. However, in Ultra Greedier, he will go into phase 2. The golden statue will come back to life, and he will enter his second stage. This phase always starts with him slamming his fists into the ground, opening the doors on the sides, and shooting brimstones out of them. This can either pick all doors at once, or just one pair of doors at a time. And for the rest of the fight, he will also be able to perform this attack. Furthermore, he can stomp the ground, spawning bomb coins, just as in phase 2. He keeps the coin spitting moves from phase 1, but the coins now also explode on impact. And lastly, he can jump in the air off screen, moving towards Isaac's position and dropping exploding coins in the process. As he lands, he will send 4 rock waves in all directions. It's worth noting about this phase that most of his attacks will only deal half a heart of damage to you, as opposed to phase 1, where most of the stuff dealt a full heart. This one is quite a bit trickier as well, because as you can see, everything just explodes on you. There's this weird spot with his spreading coin attacks where you kind of want to stay at a mid-distance from him, because otherwise, if he spits coins, they're just going to explode in your face because they're going to land right beside you. Aside from that, you want to make a habit of not standing inside of any of the doors, so if he starts stomping the ground, you won't get brimstoned. This phase, the exploding coins also drop quite a few cents on the ground, which he will and can use to heal back up, so you want to try and collect those, but honestly, any coin only heals him for about 4 HP, so honestly, you can just let him collect them if you want to. It's going to make the fight a bit longer, but not too much. In this phase, Ultra Greedier also has a lot less boss armor compared to phase 1, so this should go by a lot faster than phase 1 did. So try and unload everything you got on this guy, and you're probably going to be fine, because his HP is significantly lower, and probably the entire fight is a bit easier, and enjoy the beautiful gold explosion when Greed finally dies. Hush is the boss of the triple question mark floor. You can access this floor by defeating It Lives in under 30 minutes and having a certain amount of progression in your save file. The fight starts out with a plain old blue baby fight with half total HP. The boss itself has a bit more range because it's been fought in the 2x2 room, but other than that, it's just a plain old blue baby fight, so I'm not going to go over strategies how to beat that, since we've already talked about it. After defeating blue baby, Hush actually comes out of hiding. The actual Hush fight is then divided into 5 phases, which all consist of 20% of its total HP each. After every phase, Hush will burrow into the ground and wait for all the tears on screen to dissipate before he comes back up, starting its next phase. In every phase, he gains a few new attacks, which we are going to go over now. In phase 1, Hush stays stationary in the top center of the room. From there, he will periodically fire barrages of tears, consisting of 1 to 3 different following patterns. He can shoot 2 to 4 volleys of 4 projectiles each, with equal spacing between all of them in a bit of a spiral pattern that rotates as it goes on. He can fire U-shaped salvos of tears directly at Isaac. He can fire lines of projectiles directly at Isaac with gaps in between every 4 to 5 shots. These lines will either lose momentum as they travel if they're blue, gain momentum if they're yellow, or maintain their momentum if they're green. And lastly, Hush can fire rings of projectiles that alternate between rotating clockwise and counterclockwise as they move outwards. As the fight progresses, Hush will start combining these patterns, like here where he's shooting the green tears directly at Isaac but also firing the salvos of blue and yellow, or here where he's doing the U-shaped salvos directly at Isaac as well as the rotating tears. Note that if he does multiple patterns at the same time, the spacing between the tears will be bigger, so when he does multiple patterns at the same time, they will be easier to dodge. For the U-shaped tears or the lines that are directly fired at Isaac, you want to try and sidestep them. For the rings, you probably want to move as far away from him as possible, as the spacing gets bigger the further they travel outside. And lastly, the volleys can be easily sidestepped, as there's usually enough space to the left and the right. After falling below 80% of his max HP, Hush will briefly burrow underground and move to the center of the room before resuming his attacks. In phase 2, he maintains all the attacks from phase 1 and gains 2 new tier projectiles, in addition to a cluster of Hush flies that he can spawn and send towards Isaac periodically, or have them circle him. He can shoot 3 to 5 spiral projectiles, which are green here, that have even spacing between each spiral. The spiral projectiles will then slow down before resuming their regular movement outside and moving counterclockwise through the room. And lastly, he can fire a very dense ring of projectiles, here green in the first example and blue in the second one. That ring has a gap in the general direction of where Isaac is standing that Isaac can use to slip through. However, if you move far enough to the outside, there's actually going to be enough of a gap to slip through as well. As for dodging these attacks, the stream of flies can actually just be dodged and ignored because they move in one direction. If you have enough AoE like here, you can also try and kill them, but I do understand that most runs you're not going to have Brimstone and Sacred Heart. I just gave that to myself for the sake of demonstration. However, the flies are really easy to dodge and you don't have to kill them, you can just ignore them. The ring attack basically means that you shouldn't be moving too far left or right at any given time, so you're always ready to slip through that crack. However, that's not really a tall ask, as that is a pretty huge gap and you can really just walk through. And if you're really confident in your ability to do so, you can just move to the edge of the screen and slip through that way. As for the spiral move, once again, distance is your best friend. They move pretty far outwards and the gaps get pretty big, so it's easy to slip through. You really just don't want to get close to these tiers at all, as they slow down and then just suddenly speed up again, which you can't react to. Just stay as far away as possible and you're gonna be fine. After falling below 60% HP, Hush once again briefly burrows underground before resuming his attacks. He keeps all the attacks from the previous phase and gets 2 more additional attacks as well as an extra shot pattern. What you're looking for at is the blue tiers, which are a barrage of very widespread projectiles that then start homing in on where Isaac was standing as they were being fired. This attack can get pretty chaotic, especially once it gets mixed in with other attacks like the circle-shaped patterns here. And as you can see, I also had a bit of trouble dodging this one, as it gets pretty chaotic when he starts doing 2 things at the same time. However, you want to keep a close eye on all the tiers that come towards you and just try and slip between the gaps that form between those tiers that close in on you, and somehow you also got to dodge the ring of tiers that are being fired at you at the same time. Hush can also fire what we call the continuum attack, because they have the same color as when Isaac has the continuum item and they travel through one wall and come out on the other side. These travel in a bit of a wavy pattern, which can sometimes be a bit difficult to read. But if you look at them closely, you can see that the waves actually behave at a pretty consistent pattern, and once you find a safe spot in this attack, you'll actually know it's a safe spot for as long as Hush is firing in the same direction. Sometimes you will also find yourself in the unfortunate position where there's not quite a safe spot and you're gonna have to wiggle back and forth to try and dodge the tiers that come at you. And lastly, Hush can summon a horde of blue gapers from his mouth before sinking into the ground to relocate. While relocating, he will also be summoning blue boils, which can snipe you from across the entire map basically. This Gapers plus Continuum combo also highlights my personal biggest gripe with the Hush fight. The Continuum attack really limits your movement quite a bit, so to have enemies run at you at the same time can actually be pretty tricky. Same goes for the flies. In this phase in particular, you want to put a lot more focus on crowd controlling. But you also gotta have to face the reality that sometimes this one is just gonna hit you because of how much your movement is limited by the continuum tiers while there is stuff running at you. After dropping below 40% HP, Hush will once again drop underground for a short bit of time before re-emerging. Here he gains an extra attack and it modifies its shot patterns. Hush can now fire 3 large red projectiles that move outwards and split rapidly into numerous smaller projectiles. These projectiles keep splitting and keep moving outwards in a pretty chaotic and unpredictable pattern until they finally disappear. From this point on, Hush will also sink into the ground to relocate while firing his projectile barrages. He will only fire the projectile patterns from phase 1 in this phase. The patterns from phase 2 and phase 3 are lost from here on out. From this point onward, the cooldown between each of Hush's attacks is also drastically reduced. This is confirmed to be a bug, and by the time you watch this boss guide, it might be fixed, but as of right now, as of the day of recording this is still a thing. This also ties in with what I said earlier about the continuum attack. In this phase and onwards, it's going to be much more likely for Hush to fire his continuum pattern or any of the other chaotic tier patterns, in addition to summoning a bunch of enemies that run at you. As this bullet hell limits your movement, it's going to be very easy for you to be stuck in a situation where you can't really move out of the way and you have an enemy coming at you or another tier. There is some BS in this phase, and you're kind of just going to have to accept that at this point. As always, try to play the waves and the tier patterns to your strength and try to dodge them with the aforementioned tips, and that's really all you can do. And if you get stuck between a rock and a hard place, so be it. After falling below 20% HP, Hush will one last time burrow underground before re-emerging and continue his attacks. In phase 5, he regains most of the attacks that he lost in phase 4. He still does the burrowing underground stuff while firing tier patterns, and as you can see, there's still a drastically reduced delay between the attacks that he can and will use. In this phase, Hush also gains the ability to fire 2 laser beams upwards from his eyes. Those beams create beams on the ground that follow around Isaac. The move speed of those beams is dependent on Isaac's move speed, and they are always able to be outrun and outmaneuvered. As if that wasn't enough, the trails also leave behind a trail of slippery blue creep, and while he's doing this attacks, he also releases 5 waves of wavy, slow-moving lines of red projectiles in all directions. One more fun fact, if Isaac stays completely still while this attack is moved, the beams will actually circle him without hitting him. In this video footage, I have not leave, so it looks like I'm just avoiding the damage via that, but trust me, if you just stand still and don't move at all, these beams will not hit you. Most of the time, that's really impractical, as there's a bunch of other tier patterns on the screen at the same time, which will then hit you, but if you can manage to do it, there's actually the possibility to stand still and just not get hit by these beams. One more thing to note, the wiki also states that Hush will start regenerating HP in this last phase if you don't hit him for a certain amount of time. What you're looking at here is footage that's been sped up to 300% speed, and if you take a look at the health bar, you can see that he's not gaining back anything. This is supposedly implemented to counter stuff like Gnawed Leaf, like killing him with a sack dagger, for example, or a meat cube. However, I was not able to replicate that, so I don't know if it's true. The wiki says it, but I don't personally believe that this is the case. When Hush's HP drops to 0, all his tiers and summoned enemies immediately disappear, and he disappears in a white flash, leaving behind nothing but a shadow on the ground. Mother starts off the fight in her own unique boss room, which just has a hole in it. You drop down, you get into the Mother fight. Mother then is a 2-phase boss. In phase 1, she is going to be stuck at the top of the room doing different attacks. She can slam the ground and release 6 streams of projectiles in a radius, and also spawn a bunch of small maggots. Now, 2 of those streams of projectiles actually go straight through her. You can see them right at the top of the screen. So those are pretty much a non-issue. So she's really only releasing 4 streams of projectiles as well as the maggots. Once again, you want to take care of the maggots as soon as possible because crowd control is always advised in boss fights. And as soon as you see her lift her hand, you want to move as far away from it as possible. This is true for basically any attack she does that starts with her moving her hand, and there will be lots of those. So just make sure to get as far away as possible to maximize your reaction time. When she opens up one of her hands like this, she's about to summon a bunch of tears that move around the room in a wavy pattern and eventually start homing in on Isaac. Once again, you want to stay as far away from the hands as possible when she starts summoning these. Then you got to keep a close eye on those tier strings and start moving around the room in a half circle pattern to dodge them once they start homing in on you. You do not want to back away once they start homing in, because you will just be backing into those tier strings, so just keep moving around the room in a half circle pattern, and it should be fairly easy to dodge these. Mother can reach up and grab a knife and then throw it directly downwards. While the knife is traveling, it emits horizontal dark green tears, and upon hitting the wall, a burst of many projectile lines in a radius comes out of the knife. Dodging this one can be a bit tricky, as there is some randomness to the horizontal lines that are being fired by the thrown knife. However, one thing that I found to be very effective is to just hug the lowest point of the room, because a lot of the time there won't be any tears there, and you can just walk underneath the lines that are coming out of the bursting knife. Now, unfortunately, this is not a 100% safe strategy, because sometimes you will have tears coming straight at you. However, there are also gaps between the lines of tears. So what you want to do is get as far away as possible at the point of impact, and just keep a close eye on those lines of tears traveling towards you, identifying the gaps, and then running between them as best as you can. Occasionally, Mother will retreat upwards, becoming invulnerable, and summon a horde of 34 dead Isaacs at the bottom of the room that will start traveling towards her. Those Isaacs can be killed by you, and you should try and kill as many as possible, because every single one of them that reaches her will get smacked towards you, and it's actually pretty tough to dodge these if you don't crowd control them at all, because they will restrict your movement and then also fly towards you to hit you. So try and crowd control this as much as you can. In this video footage, I didn't crowd control them at all for the purpose of showing off this attack. And you can see that I'm getting hit a lot here, because it's just really hard to dodge this barrage of corpses that come in from the top and the bottom. After a while, Mother slams the ground with both hands, causing spike rocks to appear below each remaining dead Isaac, ending this attack. Lastly, she can spit a fistula towards Isaac, which bounces off the wall and moves back to Mother. Whenever this fistula gets close to Mother at the top, she swipes it back directly at Isaac, and whenever it collides with the back wall, it releases 4 lines of 2 tears each. Mother repeats this several times, causing the fistula to gain more and more speed, before at some point she slams both of her hands down on the mass, crushing it and sending 3 medium fistulas outwards. Every one of those medium fistulas flies for a bit until it collides with the wall, sending out 2 small fistulas and being destroyed in the process. These small fistulas then travel a short distance again before bursting and spawning a small maggot. This is probably her most tricky attack to dodge. One thing I found very effective is to stay close to Mother. This way, it's going to be very easy to dodge the shots coming out of the fistula as it collides with the wall. And furthermore, it's also going to make Mother swipe the fistula at you at a very flat angle, meaning it's going to hit the side walls a lot of the time before actually colliding with the back wall. This gives you more time to calculate where the fistula is going to hit the back wall, as well as a lot of time to hit Mother during this attack. So this is a thing you can do. Once again, this is a really difficult one. Stay away from that back wall. Stay away from the fistula ball, because otherwise you're just going to get sniped by those tears that come out of it. And try to react appropriately. After losing 2,222 HP, Mother retracts her head and arms into her body before releasing a green Mega Blast down the middle of the room, so make sure to avoid the center of the arena when you see her going into phase 2. This Mega Blast also destroys the bottom wall, turning the room into a 1x2 arena. In phase 2, she'll gain a whole new set of attacks. She can spin around in place, shooting out strings of wavy projectiles in all directions. These strings will always follow a set pattern with gaps in between, and are very easy to dodge if you just keep maximum distance and keep bobbing and weaving back and forth. She can do this inhaling move, which draws Isaac towards her, which you've got to steer against. As she inhales, tears appear behind Isaac, traveling towards her. Once she's done inhaling, she shoots a massive ball of projectiles toward Isaac that splits into smaller clusters when hitting a wall. Every one of those clusters upon hitting a wall will also send out a volley of projectiles, so it'll be important to keep an eye on them and stay as far away as possible from them. One noteworthy factor here is the fact that you can use Mother herself as a shield. The tears will actually disappear if they collide with her, so it's important that as soon as she spits that ball of tears at you, you want to move behind her for maximum protection. She can summon some faint white lines along a random wall of the arena, which indicate a line of projectiles that will be shot out shortly after. You have plenty of time to react to this, just stand in between the gaps, and you're not really going to have any difficulty getting hit by this particular attack. Lastly, she can leap off screen before charging vertically across the half of the room which Isaac is located in, then across the other half of the room in the opposite direction. The half she charges across first is also telegraphed by a splat at the top or the bottom of the room.
After she charged across the room twice, she slams down in the center of the room, releasing a bunch of spiky rocks as well as strings of projectiles in all directions. After she's defeated, Mother kind of just melts into the ground and disappears, revealing the golden chest, indicating the end of the run. Dogma is the first part of the home boss from the secret path starting in Depths. There's a total of 6 bosses on this path that you all fight back to back to back. And we're going to talk about all 6 of them separately, but I do consider them part of the same boss fight, even though they're listed separately in this boss guide or the wiki. But yeah, you're going to fight them all one after another, starting out with this one. Dogma is a 2-phase boss. In the first phase, he will be tied to the TV in the middle of the room. Dogma itself is undamageable. If you try to attack Dogma, it'll briefly show a shield indicating that you can't damage it. The way to damage this boss is to attack the TV in the center of the room. Dogma starts out floating around the room following Isaac, leaving damaging static creep on the ground and using a variety of attacks. He can fire 3 consecutive waves of 3 to 4 projectiles each in random directions. When these projectiles land, they create thin and harmless rays of light that turn into damaging lasers after a while. These lasers will always try to aim at Isaac's current position. Dodging these requires you to pay close attention to the light beams that home in on you. You want to move pretty slowly at the start and then just start moving around the room in circles to dodge this move. That way, it'll be pretty easy not to get caught up in a web of light beams. After a short bit of charging, Dogma can fire a brimstone beam that bends towards Isaac. This beam is always fired in the closest cardinal direction and then switches directions if Isaac moves closer to another cardinal direction. This can be a tricky one to dodge, but what you want to do once you get the audio cue for the brimstone is you want to stand at an ever so slight angle to him so you're not exactly in line of the brimstone. Then you want to slowly move away from the brimstone as it curves towards you, so you have maximum amount of time to react once the brimstone switches directions. This is a pretty tricky one. You don't want to be moving too fast, otherwise you're just going to run straight into it. But if you stay careful on this one, you are going to be fine. He can fire 3 consecutive bursts of 8 Godhead projectiles each. If Isaac stands within those projectiles auras for long enough, a Crack the Sky beam is going to come down and hit him. Otherwise, you actually have plenty of time to get outside of the aura. If one of those tiers hits you directly, it's going to damage you as well, of course. Dodging this one is pretty simple. If you don't want to greed for damage like I'm doing most of the time, the best way to dodge this attack is to move as far away as possible. This way, the tiers are going to spread really far and there's going to be enough space in between, so you don't have to linger inside the Godhead auras for too long. The tiers are also very slowly moving, so if you actually get a direct hit from one of those tiers, then I'm sorry, I don't know how to help you. And lastly, Dogma can fire 4 consecutive bursts of projectiles in groups of 1, 2, 3, and 4, which resemble a star pattern. After dropping below 60% of his max HP, Dogma also has a chance to slow down those tiers and have them float around for a bit before vanishing. To dodge this one, once again, you want to move as far away from Dogma as possible to increase the spread on the tiers. Also, the further the tiers are apart, the easier it's going to be to react to Dogma slowing down the tiers. Once again, this is one that you shouldn't really be afraid of because there's huge gaps between the tiers and it gives you plenty of time to react to. After destroying the TV, Dogma moves on into phase 2, which has it rise out of a puddle in a light ball, growing 2 pairs of wings like a seraph. In this phase, Dogma, between its attacks, continues to chase Isaac and will randomly use one of 3 moves. Dogma can turn into a wheel and let it rip, floating off screen before charging back towards Isaac, continuing off screen and releasing a radial burst of a total of 36 feathers in all directions. He repeats this 6 times before he ends the attack. Dodging this one is pretty simple. You always want to get as far away as possible from Dogma. When he charges at you, you simply sidestep the attack and then move in a half circle around the room to get as far away as possible from the spot which the feathers will be coming from. If you get far enough away from the spawn point of the feathers, once again there's going to be a gigantic spread between them and huge gaps between the feathers that you can simply walk through. Dogma can summon a ball of light overhead that creates 16 to 18 harmless rays of light that point outwards and spin around, pausing at some point and becoming full-on damaging light beams. It repeats this pattern 3 times before tossing the ball. The beams will once again align in all cardinal and ordinal directions and fire before the ball of light dissipates. To dodge this one, once again you want to get as far away as possible from Dogma to widen the gaps between the beams of light. They slow down quite a bit before becoming solid damaging beams, so it's pretty easy to predict where the gaps will be. The thrown star then is also easy because it's always going to be in the cardinal and ordinal directions. Lastly, if Isaac is to Dogma's left or right, he can fire a disorganized spread of feathers at Isaac, which once again you want to dodge by moving very far away from him to widen the gap gaps between the feathers. This is a very rare move that you're not going to be seeing a lot because it can only be used if you're in a certain position relative to Dogma, and he's much more likely to use the other two moves. After Dogma's HP reaches 0, it is destroyed and the whole screen fades to white before turning off like an old TV. Then Isaac is automatically given the Dogma item as the game moves you to the next segment of this boss gauntlet. The upcoming gauntlet consists of 5 bosses, the Ultra Horse Riders and the Beast, and you fight them in the same order that you would if you were to encounter them in a regular run. All of these bosses have 2 phases. We're starting out with Ultra Famine here. In phase 1, Ultra Famine has 2 attacks, which it alternates between. It matches Isaac Vertical's position and charges off screen, appears from a random side of the screen, and fires a spread of 5 lines of 5 projectiles each towards Isaac that lose speed before disappearing again. It repeats this attack 5 times. Then he moves across the screen from one side to the other in a wave pattern, oscillating between the top and the bottom. Ultra Famine spawns a swarm of Ultra Famine flies behind him as he moves. Each fly charges towards Isaac when he is close and continues to move in the same direction until disappearing off screen. In my opinion, Ultra Famine is easily the hardest part of this entire gauntlet. The disorganized spread of tears can actually get really tough because they slow down and stay on screen for quite a while, so the usual strategy of getting far away only works for a limited amount of time before the screen is flooded with tears. The next attack isn't so bad. You kind of just keep moving around in half circles to avoid these flies. You gotta sneak in between them sometimes, but as long as you stay in motion, you shouldn't really get hit by those. After losing 2/3 of his max HP, Ultra Famine loses the horse and becomes only a head, moves to the center of the room, and then continuously performs attacks from there. Ultra Famine will continuously fire small projectiles in a counterclockwise pattern while simultaneously firing 6 bursts of projectiles outwards in alternating orientations. The easiest way to dodge this is either to move to the left or right of Ultra Famine and then bob and weave up and down, as there will always be a safe space alternating between those 2 positions as I'm doing it here. After Ultra Famine, Ultra Pestilence flies into the screen from the right side with a bunch of Ultra Pestilence flies that hover around him for the entire duration of the fight. In phase 1, he also alternates between 2 attacks. He starts off by charging large Ipecac projectiles on Isaac's position. Upon landing in the lava below, they create a pillar of poisonous cloud that you can't stay in for too long. There's also a burst of green projectiles coming up wherever the Ipecac shot hits the lava, as well as 3 red projectiles coming up to the left and the right of the poison pillar. To make this one as manageable as possible, you want to make him shoot to the outer edge of the room so the poison pillar doesn't get in your way. Stacking them up like this is the easiest way to limit your movement as little as possible as well, and once the Ipecac shot hits, you just want to get decently far away from it and stay at the upper edge of the screen to not get hit by those red tears. After firing the 3 Ipecac shots, Pestilence will shoot a maggot from his eye, which flies across the screen, wrapping around 3 times before reversing directions, and then moving back 3 times before moving back into Pestilence. The first screen wrap, the maggot always aims for the top third of the arena. On the second, third, and fourth, the maggot will always aim straight for Isaac. On the 5th, it once again goes for the top third of the arena, and on the 6th and final screen wrap, it aims for Ultra Pestilence's eye, moving back into Ultra Pestilence. Staying in motion is once again the key for this one. It does get pretty easy to protect the maggot once you know its behavior. Really, you just want to avoid the top third of the screen, because that way you're guaranteed not to get hit by 3 out of 6 of his wraps around the arena. And then for the other 3, you kind of just want to bob and weave up and down like you do it for a lot of boss patterns, and that makes sure that the maggot isn't going to hit you. After dropping to 40% HP, Ultra Pestilence loses his head, indicating the start of phase 2. In that phase, he periodically spawns Ultra Pestilence flies around himself to protect himself. At the start of the phase, he will also spawn a giant Ultra Pestilence fly ball, which follows Isaac. Attacking this ball spawns additional flies. Ultra Pestilence only performs this attack 1 more time after dropping to 20% HP. The only other thing he does in this phase is fire a spray of projectiles from his neck, which rain down in the area in front of it. To do well in this phase, you want to take down the fly ball as quickly as possible, even if it's annoying. Crowd control is once again your best friend. The flies that circle Pestilence and protect him aren't as high priority targets because they never come for you, and they're just going to die over time as you aim for Pestilence. For the tear rain attack, it is very important that you keep an eye on the tears as they leave the screen. If you want to have an easier time dodging them, just get closer to the bottom of the screen and you'll have more time to react.
After Pestilence is defeated, Ultra War charges in from the right side of the screen and once again alternates between 2 attacks. Ultra War starts out by throwing large Giga Bombs onto Isaac's position. They float there for a bit and then burst into a cross pattern that spreads across the entire room, similar to Bomber Bomb Boys. The bombs also release a burst of 12 lines of 4 projectiles each outwards when it explodes. This attack is repeated 3 times. To dodge this one, try baiting him into throwing them close to the edge of the screen and then move to the other edge of the screen so you have more time to react to the burst of tears. The shock waves are very easy to predict as they're always moving in the cardinal directions. It's really the tears you have to look out for. After throwing 3 bombs, he charges off screen towards Isaac, then wraps around the bottom of the screen 3 times, creating 4 to 6 pillars of light each. After a short amount of time, large lava projectiles launch upwards from those beams of light. There's plenty of space and time between those beams of light and those lava projectiles, so it's very easy to just dodge them by standing in the empty spaces between them. After doing enough damage, Ultra War moves into phase 2, which has him get off his horse, where he then alternates between 2 attacks. He starts chasing Isaac and then lunges diagonally downwards in Isaac's direction. After that, Ultra War releases 4 streams of fire in the cardinal directions, as well as a small burst of slower moving fires in all directions. This attack is repeated twice. The dashes are very telegraphed, so what you do in this phase is kind of just run away from him and hit at him, and once you see he's getting ready to dash, you want to move out of the way. It's very easy to sidestep this attack. Once he dashes, you want to get as far away from him as possible, once again to widen the gaps between the fires, making it pretty easy to dodge them. You can also shoot at the fires to destroy them, but most of the time that's going to be pretty impractical. After doing 2 lunge attacks, War lunges down diagonally 1 more time while holding a bomb. The bomb then explodes in a cross pattern that spreads across the entire screen. Ultra War then starts bouncing from one side of the screen to another 3 times while moving upwards before falling down in the lava. When Ultra War comes out of the lava, he creates 4 to 6 large lava projectiles that launch upwards, similarly to the second attack from his first phase. This one's honestly pretty tricky to dodge. You want to sidestep the diagonal lunge, then you want to get into a diagonal position from War to dodge the explosion, but at the same time you need to react to the fact that he's moving diagonally upwards 3 times, so you want to move up to try and dodge him, but then also use your opportunity to get below him. But at the same time, getting below him is tricky because afterwards he's going to fall into the lava and summon a bunch of lava balls. So the natural progression for this fight is move diagonally up from him, then get below him as soon as possible, and once he starts falling, move back to the top of the screen. It's really tricky to execute, and it's very easy to get hit in this phase. This might actually be the hardest attack to dodge in this entire sequence, but with a bit of practice it can be done. One more thing to note, when War dies, he explodes, which is actually capable of damaging Isaac, so when you see him start his death animation, get as far away from him as possible. As the last boss in this gauntlet, you fight Ultra Death. Ultra Death, unlike the other Harbingers, actually only has 1 phase and has 3 attacks, which he cycles through continuously. He starts off by summoning a rectangle of 11 Ultra Death sights, which close in on Ultra Death's position and keep moving until they go off screen. From my experience, there's always a hole at the top that you can slip through, so it's very easy to dodge this one if you just move through the top and then kind of in a half circle to get out of the line of the bottom sights. After doing this 3 times, he flies off screen, then reappears slowly, summoning a bunch of Ultra Death Heads, which move up and down across the screen in the same direction. At the end of the attack, the skulls freeze in place, and Ultra Death summons 3 harmless sights, which spin outwards, destroying the skulls. In terms of dodging, there's really not a whole lot to say about this. Their pattern is pretty regular, and it's fairly easy to anticipate how these are going to move, so just find the gaps in between the skulls and slip through them. Also, don't get freaked out by the sights at the end. Keep in mind, they can't hurt you, so once the skulls stop moving, you can just stay in place until they're gone. Immediately after this attack, he applies darkness to the screen and starts dashing in from either the left or the right, trying to swing at Isaac with a scythe. The first time it's random which side he comes in from, but after that he always alternates between left and right. He does this 4 times. Afterwards the screen does return to normal and Ultra Death reappears, starting the cycle of his 3 attacks. To dodge this one, you want to move as little as possible before he comes in from the first side. and then just dodge the scythe either to the top or the bottom. This is really important. Don't move left or right on the first swing because you won't know which side he's coming from. It's really easy to run into him. Afterwards, you can anticipate which side he comes from, so you can dodge to the left or the right respectively as well. After defeating Death, the beast in the background lets out a big roar and finally moves on into the foreground to start attacking Isaac. The beast will always emerge from the lava on the right side of the screen, so make sure you stay to the left. The beast will then start charging at Isaac with the screen scrolling alongside. The beast will do that for a while Isaac in flight has to dodge stalagmites and stalactites. At the end of this charge, the beast slows down and then does one of 3 attacks. It can do a large inhaling move that sees rings of fire traveling towards the beast with small gaps in between that Isaac has to slip through. After inhaling 8 rings, the beast then pauses for a short amount of time before firing a gigantic brimstone from the mouth that you have to dodge by moving to the top of the screen. The beast then charges to the other side of the map, which you want to stay at the top of the screen for before repeating the charging cycle. One more thing to note, the beast on earlier builds of the game used to do this attack first every single time. Nowadays the game has been patched, so the beast can actually pick from any one of her 3 attacks to do, but the beast can also start out with her other 2 attacks, which are the following. After ending her charge, Beast can do a big roar and spawn 4 beast souls which chase Isaac and charge at him. They try to predict his movement before disappearing into the lava. To dodge these, you pretty much do the same thing you do against every enemy that charges at you in a straight line. You keep your distance, and then once they start moving at you, you want to move around in kind of a circle pattern so they charge right past you. After finishing this attack, the beast submerges into the lava, causing glowing orange lines to come out of the ground. After a while, where those lines are, there will be fire projectiles coming out of the lava, flying up and then falling back down after a short period of time. Eventually, the beast re-emerges on the opposite side from where it was before, launching a bunch of lava rocks into the air that go off screen for a short period of time and then come falling down. Alternatively, after charging, the beast can open her mouth and fire 3 radial waves of slow-moving fires, then 6 radial strings of fast-moving projectiles, which travel through the gaps between each of the fires. This is easily the beast's trickiest move, as especially the tears come pretty unexpectedly and move really fast, and you don't have a lot of room to dodge. To avoid getting hit here, you want to move as far away from the beast as possible to increase the gaps that are between the attacks. Alternatively, there's also a pretty convenient gap between the second and the third fire that the beast releases, so you can hide in between there and avoid the tear attack and then sneak out in time before getting pressed against the wall by the fire. One more thing to note, after falling below 6,660 HP, the beast enters phase 2. The only difference is that during the charge attack, some of the stalactites are going to have cracks and eventually fall from the ceiling once they reach the middle of the screen. For that reason, it makes sense to always stay close to the beast during the charging phase. Because the screen scrolls along with the beast charging, you're never going to get hit by the beast that way, and it gives you maximum amount of time to react to the stalagmites and the stalactites and pretty much never be in danger of being hit by a falling rock. After falling to about 33% of his HP, the beast is once more forced to scream and submerge before re-emerging on the other side of the screen, and then just doing a continuous charge at Isaac. In this third phase, there's no falling rocks anymore. It's just the beast chasing after you while you have to dodge stalagmites and stalactites while hitting the beast. As this phase progresses, the beast starts to deteriorate, looking worse and worse as the fight goes along. At about 2000 HP, her horns start to crack. At about 1000 HP, she loses an eye. And at roughly 500 HP, all her teeth are gone and she has a very melted look to her. When her health drops to 0, a large ray of light comes from above and strikes down on her, which is immediately followed by the appropriate ending 22. Delirium is pretty much the big bad final boss of the entire game. You can reach him by going through the Hush Path, and as of the most recent update of Isaac, you will always get Delirium portals after fighting Blue Baby, the Lamb, and Mega Satan. This was the OG final boss from Afterbirth Plus, and to this day, to me personally, it still feels like this is the big bad guy at the end. This is, in my opinion, the hardest boss of the game. It's your typical transforming boss. Delirium over the course of the fight will assume the forms of all bosses you fought or encountered over the course of the run. This means you do have the possibility of somewhat manipulating which bosses he can transform into, as with this example. I had only encountered Fallen and Isaac on the way to Delirium, so those are the only bosses he is transforming into. I'm saying somewhat because in most runs you don't really have the opportunity to skip bosses, but were you to find a shovel, for example, you can in theory get here with very minimal transforms. That being said, there's obviously not a whole lot to say about his individual transformations because we've covered all of these in the last 3.5 hours. However, during the fight, as he's transforming into these different bosses, he will also continuously switch between one of 11 different tier patterns. Delirium can shoot 10 projectiles that fluctuate in and out while expanding, which is that outward ring that he fired first here. He can fire 5 projectiles directly in Isaac's direction. Also worth mentioning is that the size of the projectile actually varies from attack to attack. You can see he does the 5 spread a bunch of times in a row here, and they're all different size. This does not, however, reflect the damage they do. All attacks of Delirium do a full heart of damage. He can rotate 14 projectiles that rotate clockwise, counterclockwise, or back and forth as they travel outwards. He can fire 16 projectiles outwards in all directions. He can fire 8 slow-moving green ipecac projectiles in all cardinal and ordinal directions, which will explode once they hit the ground or a wall. He can fire 20 projectiles that expand outwards and slowly rotate clockwise or counterclockwise. I realize that this is a bit hard to follow at this point because the screen is filled with tears, but this is what a typical Delirium boss fight looks like. There's just going to be tears all over the screen, and you're going to try and get as far away as possible to dodge everything. This is slowed down to a crawl, so at this speed it would be really easy to dodge him, but obviously this is beyond stopwatch speed, so it's really never going to be this slow unless you bring like an era walk. He can fire a burst of projectiles that travels outwards in random directions, usually though in the direction of Isaac. He can fire 6 projectiles that travel outwards in a zigzag pattern. This one is particularly tricky, especially when it's paired with other tier attacks, which it usually will be, because it has a tendency to sneak into the gaps between those tiers that you want it to run through. He can fire another set of 4 tiers moving outwards in a zigzag pattern. This one's very short range, as you can see, so it can't really threaten you at all if you stay far away. He'll occasionally fire a very short range projectile in a random direction. Now, there's 2 more patterns described on the wiki that I couldn't get him to do. One is described as 4 lines of 3 projectiles that spiral outwards. I think this is a pattern that can be very easily confused with the spiral pattern he does. Like, honestly, he's doing it 4 times in a row here, and it kind of looks like what is described on the wiki. I don't know if this is it really, or if somebody just mistook it for this exact attack. And then there's another one that's described as 4 projectiles outwards in a lopsided cross. I have no idea what that's supposed to be. So if you know what this pattern is, feel free to provide a screenshot or video footage and I'll happily include it in the video description. But as of now, I kind of think somebody just mistook another attack for a pattern that doesn't really exist. So that's a list of all the patterns that he does, and I bet you thought it looks simple enough when you look at the fight, 20% slowed down, but this is what the fight looks like when Delirium actually transforms into different bosses, as well as shoots all those tier patterns at the same time. This is honestly a very hectic fight, and it's kind of difficult for me to give you any tips because there's so many things happening all at the same time, and as you can see, it's very easy to get hit or get caught in a bad spot. Sometimes Delirium is going to fire at you from one side and then immediately teleport behind you and then also fire from you at that side. It's not uncommon to get cheap shot in this fight, and while most of the times the patterns are gonna be fair, it's pretty much impossible to do a fight where nothing cheap happens whatsoever. Nevertheless, there's a bit of general advice that I wanted to share with you regarding this fight. First and foremost, if you find Brimstone Sacred Heart, you're gonna have a pretty easy time here. Kidding, obviously. I gave myself Brimstone and Sacred Heart here for demonstration purposes, but obviously most of the time, that's not what you're gonna have. While he's in his main head form, Delirium does not have a boss shield, so that is the time where you want to blast him to deal as much damage as possible. All the other forms, while he is a different boss, he will have a boss shield which generally reduces the incoming damage on him, so it's going to be much more sluggish to fight him. As with pretty much every other late game boss, one of the greatest pieces of advice for this guy is to stay as far away as possible. Once again, being far away increases the spread on tiers as they reach you. Some of them won't even reach you, so that also makes it super safe. And the bigger the holes between the tiers, the easier it will be to dodge them. For this exact reason, range is your best friend in this fight. It's not affected by the damage reduction, and high range on a tier build allows you to just blindly shoot into the room and actually hit Delirium fairly frequently. Therefore, any item that gives you infinite range, such as the technologies or Brimstone, are great, and because you're going to be random firing a lot, of course, homing is going to be great as well. You're not always going to be finding these, I'm just saying they're going to be your best friends here. Brimstone in particular is not great here for its damage, it's great here for its range. You want range. On the contrary, one of my favorite items in the entire game, Mom's Knife, is actually fairly weak against Delirium. Like, I'm not going to say it's bad, of course, because it's still a very strong item. However, the short range forces you to get closer to Delirium a lot of the time, which leads to some hits that can be avoided on high range items. Also, over the years, the developers released updates time and time again that claimed that unavoidable damage was removed from Delirium, as Delirium will sometimes just teleport right on top of you or spawn a bunch of tiers on top of you, especially when he turns into Mom. Now, the idea that this has been fixed is absurd, and you should not believe anyone that tells you otherwise, because there's 2 clips on screen right now playing over and over again that clearly prove that when Mom is over you, that she can just spawn a bunch of tiers on top of you. However, I will say that the frequency of this has been drastically reduced to the point where Delirium feels pretty fair. Now, with this, we've covered every boss in the entire game, explaining all their attack patterns and giving some general tips on how to beat them. I hope this knowledge will help you in becoming a better player and avoiding unnecessary damage on these bosses, because that's the key to having a successful run, is not getting hit on those, to hit your devil deals, angel rooms, whichever it is you're looking for, and also going into the late game fights with more HP. The easiest way to get good at these bosses is to spawn into the starting room and then just spawn them in. You don't even have to give yourself a knife or any OP stuff, like just spawn the boss into your starting room and try to dodge their patterns for as long as possible. That gives you an easy way to get more proficient. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this boss guide, and if it did, feel free to leave a like and a sub on the video, as that's an easy way to support me and it won't cost you anything. I put a lot of work into this boss guide, and if I had to guess, there was probably a combined 150 to 200 hours that I worked on it alone, because I'm currently a one-man team. So it would be a great help from you if you could support me by doing these things. If there's any additional types of content or guides you would like to see me do, feel free to let me know in the comments. And also, please let me know in the comments, which do you think is the hardest boss for you personally to beat? And if you wish to see more of my regular content, there will be a link to my Eden Destination Roulette playlist on screen right now, which sees me doing Eden streaks to random destinations every run.